Hey everyone, welcome
Hey.
to episode 3
What's up?
of
Needs more energy,
the Elden Ring haters.
Oh
podcast.
my God! Why are we stop losing our audience immediately as we start the fucking podcast?
The
No.
Elden Ring.
I'm
Elden
taking
Ring
over
haters.
hosting duties.
No,
This is
the
the
Elden-
gaming something podcast. We haven't named it yet. I don't know. We talk every few weeks. I'm streaming this today on my main channel as well, because I want more people to watch it. So that's why I'm here. But yes, we are all here. Hello, Cav. Hello, Mike. Hello, Zed. How you all doing?
Doing good.
Yeah, really glad. Shadow of the Mid Tree, that hype's passed, and now Black Mid Wukong is the new thing. But we'll get through it. And
I already know.
Ubisoft
I already know the biases before we've even started.
Mhm.
I already can sense them. I'm gonna hear some Mid Souls jokes. I'm gonna hear some.
Cav, I saw your post on Threads that you liked Mag, so automatically your opinions on games are out the window.
Wait, what?
Mag is my Concord, and also Mag lasted.
No,
way
oh
longer.
my God! Don't even compare the quality. Mag ran at like 20
Mag
frames per second. No, this is terrible comparison.
256 players in like 2010, like it was unheard.
It was
Mag.
You're glitching out again, but it was.
Hey, you know what? This is like playing Mag. You know, like it's fucking just watching your stream. 20 frames a second, 14 frames. Did EA optimize you? Like, tell me more.
It had good ideas.
No,
the issue is it just PS2 era. You can't execute that many things. It just wasn't well executed. But anyways, Cav, what's on the list today?
So obviously, Zed's joined us today, and I thought because we all did the first podcast, we talked about like our background in like video games, like our favorites growing up. So Zed, I thought to start this off before we get into the meaty discussion about Concord, do you want to just give us your background, like games you grew up playing, like what like era of gaming did you grow up on, like what are you big on now? So just if you want to, as long as short as you want. So if you want to go through that.
For sure. I mean, I grew up like first off, Sega kid, got a Sega Genesis when I was a kid, and was very much so doubling and tripling down. So everybody got an N64, and I got a Sega Saturn, which was a mistake. But then I got a Sega Dreamcast, which is the correct choice. And you know, I've been a pretty avid gamer for most of my life. In 2009, around 2010, I got really into fighting games. And that's kind of been a huge career choice for me. Like I do all the music for Evo, which is a big fighting game tournament and everything like that. So I'm very into just the fighting game community in general. I played Street Fighter 6 quite a bit. I tried to play competitively for a while, not Street Fighter 6, but other Street Fighter games. So yeah, I'm very into that. Doing stuff for a couple big. I was in. If you ever played Mortal Kombat 1, I'm the rapper at the end of Mortal Kombat 1, rapping.
That's sick.
So I've done a bunch of like I'm very into gaming. I follow a lot of news about developers, and I have a lot of opinions on Concord and everything like that.
Do you?
But
As someone who hasn't played the game, which is most people.
Yeah,
a lot of people that ever played Concord have a lot of thoughts about Concord. Let me tell you, I fucking put 35 hours into Concord.
Did you really? You'd be surprised about my thoughts
it's amazing.
about it.
I love it, and now it's dead.
You'd be surprised at how. First, you'd be surprised at what my thoughts are. But I think overall, my feelings about we'll get into that. But like, yeah, I'm a pretty big avid gamer. I've been playing Black Myth Wukong, you fucking troll, and Shadow of the Urchi quite a bit. I picked up like I got into like a first person shooter phase recently, and I've just been trying to go back into Doom Eternal again and play a little bit of like Modern Warfare and all these other kind of things that I kind of missed because all of this is just so all consuming a little bit. But yeah, I mean, like I'm anything that has like a really good enriching like kind of experience, I'm always in, or anything that's very competitive, I can get into as long as it doesn't require like 3,000 hours at jump to get into, if that makes sense.
So a couple of quick questions. Best fighting game ever for you? Do you play sports games? And what do you think of Ubisoft?
Best fighting game ever? That is a crazy question to ask someone. For me, it's probably Third Strike. Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, because, and I think it's like this last Evo solidified it, because it's one of those games. It's not a very balanced game, but the system is so brilliant that you get some of the most amazing plays ever. If you've ever never played Street Fighter 3, it's basically like it's Street Fighter 3. The first version sucked, the second version sucked, the third version was the best game of all time. You can press, how when you press back to block in fighting games, well, if you press forward the second something hits you in this game, you can parry it and then you get like a little bit of advantage. And so like you get those crazy clips of like Chun-Li doing like a bunch of kicks and then somebody parrying it. This year somebody picked Hugo, which is one of like the bottom 5 characters in the game, and got to top 8 and got third place. And it was fucking crazy. Like he was doing the splits on stage. He was fucking, it's one of the, like, if you have time right now, go look up the finals for Street Fighter 3 at EVO this year. It's one of the, it was like a religious experience watching that thing, man. It was incredible. But Third Strike, I don't like Ubisoft. I don't like Ubisoft. Well, I don't want to say that, but like, because I don't want to ruin future employment opportunities. But like, I don't like some of the tendencies of Ubisoft with the way they handle certain games. I don't think the Uplay thing was a very, very smart decision. But it's like every fucking company. Every company always has, like, pretty much every company goes to this phase like, hey, we're cooking really, really well. And then someone's like, what would be a really good idea? And then they fuck up everything. Right? So that's just been my general experience, But people there are nice.
What's the best Ubisoft game, then? Even if you don't
What's the best Ubisoft game? Rayman. OG Rayman, dude.
Assassin's Creed 2.
From the Assassin's Creed 2 was really good. I liked Assassin's Creed 3 until like it ended, and then I was like, so this didn't end. Like I was so excited for the series to be like have like a nice little capper, and it's just like, oh, we're just gonna do this every year now.
But then we got the best one, so I'm not too mad about that.
Far Cry 3 was really good. I like Far Cry 3 a lot, even though it's like super problematic and has all these issues. But Far Cry 3 was cool.
That's just Far Cry 2 as well. just a white South African mercenary in like sub-Saharan Africa. Like, Ubisoft has some weird stuff.
Yeah, they do.
Definitely. If you're trying to be like I think in gaming in general, anything before I think the year 2014, you're gonna run into something that's pretty fucked up like midway through the gaming experience, right?
I might talk about this, but I played Splinter Cell Blacklist 2013. And I have a lot of issues with its depictions of just Muslims in general. It's really bad.
Currently the like I'm running through Modern Warfare 2, and like there's like just the depiction of Muslims. Like this is still wildly like a little bit Islamophobic. And then not only that, like first off, you think that's bad. First off, if you pick up a Sonic the Hedgehog game circa 2006, you get bestiality. So you're not like nothing is safe. Okay, like you
kiss that princess.
Kiss that princess.
These damn woke games nowadays, you can't even do bestiality anymore. God
damn. Yeah. Where's Sonic sticking his tongue down a human woman's throat?
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Before we move on,
then he's the one performing the bestiality, not the other way around. Then
that's right. I don't even know if it was consensual, which opens up a whole other can of worms.
But no, Sonic kissed her to wake her up. It's like Sleeping Beauty, isn't that the plot?
Yeah, but Sleeping Beauty is weirdly rapey though. Like no one's if you just recounted the events of Sleeping Beauty to like any young girl, Gen Alpha or Gen Z, they'd be like, what the fuck? Get the fuck out of my house. Like right now.
It's very
if they owned a house. I don't know if they own a house. That's weird that they would have a house.
We're gonna transition from weird Sonic stuff by just saying there are 2 people on this podcast who think Sonic Frontiers is better than Elden Ring. And put it high.
That's not what I said. That's not putting words in my mouth.
It's not
just happened to platinum Sonic Frontiers because it is actually a really good Sonic game. Despite
Sonic Frontiers is a very good Sonic game.
It's a great podcast game. Let me say that. I put on a podcast and I just collect the rings and I get the platinum. It's a great experience.
This is probably good to mention.
That's too good for the podcast.
This is probably good to mention for my background, like, but I am a massively insane Sonic fan. Like I'm a huge Sonic Adventure 2, played every Sonic game, made Sonic fan games at one point, like in pain Sonic fan, right? Like so I'm a huge Sonic fan. I'm not a furry, but I'm a huge Sonic fan. So
that's
one
funny
word
because I'm like
review
the opposite. I think
mad Sonic hater.
I really don't like Sonic except for Sonic Frontiers. I just never the platforming never clicked. Like to me, it's like a speed run game. It's not really a platforming game. It's like you know,
3D ones
like
for sure.
go back to the 2D ones. Try to slow platform through. I think it's like level 2. It's like a pain in the ass. Like this is not fun. Like
I disagree. I think the original games like are really really good platformers. I think Sonic Adventure 1 is a really good game. Sonic Adventure 2 is a good, like certain parts of it are very very good and certain parts of it are fairly mid. And then like it's just a bunch of shit. Then you get to Generations.
There's a lot of shit too.
Yeah.
What about Shadow the Hedgehog? In one word, how would you describe Shadow the Hedgehog?
The character or the game?
No, the game. In one word.
It's fucking terrible. What the fuck you think, bro? Like, what are you? It has
guns. I loved it as a kid.
That's 2 years before human. Like, do you understand? Like, that was at a time where Gears of War was happening, and when that was announced, like, oh, by the way, Shadow's coming out, and he has a gun. And then, like, the year before, they were like, you know how fast Sonic is? He's faster than the speed of sound. Then I'm like, then why the fuck does someone need a gun if you're faster than the speed of sound? Like, what?
Yeah. It was a good time for me as a kid. But let's move on now to Concord. So David, I've done something fun. Before we get your review, I went onto your comment section of both your videos on it, and I grabbed some.
Oh my god, the comments are hilarious because people think this game didn't succeed because of pronouns. No, you fucking idiots.
Oh no.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah.
Yes.
What?
There's this whole exactly. You weren't even aware of it, but there was this hate bot in a small corner of the internet that thought they took down Concord because they complained about DEI.
Oh my
god! Nothing to fucking do with anything. Idiots.
Can I just say real quick, because I have nothing to add to the Concord situation because I didn't play it. But when I saw the news that it was getting pulled, my first thought was, "Oh my god, David is going to be so upset," because I know how much you were pulling for this game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was literally sitting on the toilet looking at my phone. I was like, "Oh my god, no!"
David, you have many unique. David, you have many unique qualities amongst all my friends. One of them is liking Concord. So I just want to let you know.
I actually fucking played the game. Because I actually played the game. The issue is people didn't play the game. That like, oh, okay. Let me.
Yeah, I'm gonna repeat, David. I bought a Sega Saturn, so like, listen, I know the pain.
So let's start with some of the comments, and then David can give his review. So I want to do David's review. I want to give my quick review because I played the beta, and then we can just have a general conversation about all of it. So this is after you got new comments, David. I don't know if you've seen them.
I know. I've been seeing them.
Yeah. You and the other 5 players must be devastated. This trash should have never been released. Sony's paid actor. Sony's paid actor. They talk saying about you. This age like milk. Man's in a fight for his life against reality.
What? I love how David is a Sony shill and a DNC shill now.
Like the comments are objectively hilarious. The issue that I have is anybody now dancing on the grave of the game. We were talking about people that poured their life into a game for like for 5+ years. It's actually like it's polished. It's fun. Yeah, there are issues with marketing. You could maybe mention issues with it couldn't differentiate like visually. I don't think it differentiated very well. But
enormous issues with those,
yeah. But it's a solid, well-playing game. And these people, like, imagine pouring 5 or more years of your life into something, and it lasts for 2 weeks and it's dead. Like, games development is a fucking disaster for workers. Like, it's just terrible. And it's unclear if they're going to make it. If they're really going to try and make it free to play, I hope they do. I wanted to come back because I had a blast playing it. But it's something that where they could just cut and run. Like Sony may just be like, we're going to move on from this. And the game is like so many games release broken, like and it takes time to fix them. Wasn't Fortnite released as like a PvE game, and like it took like 2 years to find like an audience?
It was released as a PvE game, but they had the battle royale thing just as a side thing because PUBG was doing so well, and then that blew the fuck up, and it took over what PUBG, which was pretty buggy at the time.
Yeah, it's like so many games get like an opportunity to fix themselves and improve and grow an audience. Concord didn't get that. And Concord was separating itself from that. Concord was actually a finished product. Like it wasn't buggy. It ran perfectly. I'd never had issues. Even finding a match until a Monday morning. Like I'd been playing sporadically, like in the morning sometime, at night sometime. Monday morning I had a hard time finding a match, and it was like once the issue with the PvP game is you need an audience to play it in order to for the game to exist, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if the audience simply isn't playing the game, if no one's playing the game, it's a problem. So, but it released in a finished state. Very few online games release in a perfectly finished state, and this game did, and it's actually fun, and it is different. People say, "Oh, it didn't," it's like everything else. Then you didn't fucking play the game. It plays it's paced more like Halo mixed with like Heroes. It's more of an arena shooter than an Overwatch, but it has elements of Overwatch. Like there are elements of various games, of course, like all games are, but it stood out in its own way. There's no, believe me, I played every free to play game imaginable, every shooter imaginable. Even since this announcement, I re-downloaded Apex Legends, I re-downloaded Overwatch 2 just to see, do these feel at all like Concord? Can I get into something else? And they don't. I might jump back into Overwatch 2 because I loved Overwatch 1. 2 turned me off when it went free to play, but it doesn't seem as bad in terms of the UI as some of the other free to play games, so I may be willing to give more of a chance.
I'm not trying to be rude, but you're talking about the same game. You're saying Overwatch 2 and Overwatch 1. It's the same fucking game.
Well, they deleted the Overwatch 1 released as a $40 game though. Like it didn't release as a free to play game. So
I understand that, but like I think the biggest thing was like people were like, oh well, you can do Overwatch 2. It's like, oh, it's gonna be PvE and that's gonna be different, and then it was Overwatch.
Yeah,
yeah.
But it like by the time that came out, I don't know, it kind of felt a bit stale. So maybe because I haven't played it for a while, I'm enjoying it more than I did when it first came out. But the fact that anyway, just a tangent. The fact that they deleted Overwatch 1 like completely and just it's Overwatch 2 only now. I think that's insane. Just as insane as pulling a game 2 weeks after launch, giving it no chance to actually succeed. And this is really so. Before we even get to my thoughts in the game, which I think are clear, I think it's awesome. The issue with the launch is 100% on Sony. The way they announced it when they announced the game with the CG trailer. That, let's be honest, everyone was saying it kind of felt a little like Guardians of the Galaxy, but just kind of stale. Like I'm a little over that quippy dialogue. It just doesn't do anything for me. When I saw that CG trailer, I had zero interest in the game. When the beta hit, I almost didn't download it. I'm like, you know what? I'm curious. I got nothing to play right now. I mean, to be fair, I have a lot to play, but I was curious to see. You know what? I've been looking for a shooter to kind of fill this void that Overwatch 1 left for me. I want to see if this is fun. I played a few matches. I'm like, oh my god, this is actually a lot of fun, and I kept playing it. I think after like 3 matches in the beta, I pre-ordered the game, and I was like, I'm definitely in. Like the story stuff, whatever. Though to be fair, once the game released and they had this, it's called the Galactic Guide. It's this it's a page where it's like a big star system, and you can kind of glide around and look at different planets and different pathways, and there's various stories explaining like the background to the game. There is a lot of lore, and a lot of it's really interesting. It's just the fact that it's all text that it's not a good way to convey to most people who don't want to read a whole book on a television what who these characters are, what the story is. But just a quick overview of what the story is, because that part is interesting. There was this event happened that separated this part of the galaxy from everybody else, and that's where this game takes place. It's called like the Tempest, is like kind of like where the division is, where the explosion was. So these people are sort of like they're off in space in their own thing, separated from the rest of the universe, and they're trying to figure out like what's going on. And a lot of it's around free gunners and anyways, there's more to it, but
no, because
it takes elements, aspects from like salt is a big element as well, in the fight over that, which is a common theme throughout a lot of sort of sci-fi and stories generally. Like there's battles over resources and that kind of thing, but there was a good set of lore there that seemed interesting and worth developing upon. The issue is with the vignettes were sort of like these fly on a wall things of like these one-off conversations, as opposed to explaining, first laying the groundwork, who these characters are, why should we care about them, and then developing a story on top of that. All three or four vignettes that came out were just sort of like these people having conversation about whatever. They're having a conversation about whatever. Like it didn't explain anything. It's like you had to actually read the Galactic Guide to understand what was going on in the vignettes. And it was just, in terms of telling a story, I don't think it was effective. It also, it's a multiplayer only shooter. So a lot of people jumping into that do not care about the story.
But at the same time, I think the thing you're saying, like, look, like the first trailer that drops being a CGI trailer, you know, or not CGI, but like a cinematic trailer as opposed to like a gameplay trailer, like that's a huge thing. And the fact that it's immediately compared to Guardians of the Galaxy, I mean, like, let's be very honest, like this is a polished game that's meant to capitalize on Overwatch. It was meant to specifically capitalize on that, right? And even if it has different styles, like that was what it was mainly being compared to. And if you're a product and you're like you're given the I mean, this happens all the time. We know that, like with like big studios being like, hey, make a game like this. They're like, fucking okay, we'll figure it out. And
that's not what this is though. Because
the
devs behind this worked on Destiny. They worked on I think some worked on Apex Legends. Like this was the game they had planned. I think before Sony even bought them.
Okay.
They bought them because of this game.
But I think the issue then is like, but if that's the case, then the issue then is like the marketing is just so off.
Yes, that's what
because
it was.
I feel like first off, you said there was a beta. I didn't even know there was a beta, and I'm like tapped into like everything. Like I was like, there was a fucking beta. What? You know, like look at, just for example, like compare. If this is a game that Sony wants to work as a live service game, right, and this is coming around the same time, like I think it was announced around the same time where people were getting really mad at like Arkham, the Arkham game that was coming out, the Suicide
Squad.
Yeah, it was around the same time, and people were like very, very nervous about those kind of things happening. And then over time, like it just leaves a bad taste in people's mouths. So when this gets announced, if you don't have sufficient enough push on it, or if somebody is just like, oh, whatever, just put it out, it'll work, it's going to fucking bomb. And so much of the time, like, you know, you'll have executives who are like, I'll put it out, it'll figure itself out, without understanding that you need like push in some directions, and you'll get a functioning product, right? And you'll get a functioning product that lasts over, like this could have very easily been, you know, hey, that Guardians of the Galaxy game, or that hero shooter that Sony's working on, that's kind of like Guardians of the Galaxy, made by the same people who made Destiny and everything like that. It's actually really fucking good, and you should go try it out. But I didn't see like a shit ton of articles about that. The first articles I saw were actually not a lot of people are playing it.
That was
right.
Do you want to say that? Do you want to say that, David?
Dominated. I gotta say, understand why that dominated the conversation. YouTube algorithm pushes this idea of like Steam numbers make up 75% of what fucking YouTube gamers talk about. Like, it is wild to me how much Steam concurrents take up the conversation around video games. How about talk about the fucking game? Like, so many conversations I saw about this game for people that actually played it. Like, while they're talking about, like, oh yeah, the game's fun, but like the title is like, this game is dead, no one's playing it. It's like, how about you talk about how you enjoyed your experience with
the skill up review? The skill up review is that 100%.
Yeah, exactly.
But I want to push back on that, because, like, honestly, like, yeah, 100% that's true. Like, there's a way too much focus on Steam numbers versus everything else. But as somebody who is like loved the game and been part of a giant community with some really shit Steam numbers for like 5 years, something that I do know very well is that, like, if you don't, like, you know, that's going to be the conversation. You're Sony, like, you know, that's going to be the conversation when it jumps out. So you should have a willingness to make sure, like, it's very easily, like, before a game comes out, you have the embargo lift, right? You have time for reviews to really like push out. So they very easily could have planned like, hey, we're gonna have like the beta, or like specifically reviewers can be a part of this for a certain amount of time, and they make that like embargo like a big thing. Like, hey, we're gonna lift this embargo this day. All these reviews are gonna come out this day, and you're gonna have a big push for Concord, right? If they would have done that and the game got really, really big reviews, Steam numbers would, like, even if the Steam numbers were lower, the note could have been, hey, Sony's amazing hero shooter has low Steam numbers. Not just Steam's the hero shooter has low Steam numbers. Steam numbers are going to be a part of the conversation no matter what. And I agree with you. There should be more of a focus on gameplay, but unfortunately, that is not the world we live in. And I'm a little bit frustrated more so at Sony for not fucking understanding that and not preempting the conversation in general. Right? Every developer knows.
They simply did not push this game properly. And I think part of the issue is this was part of Jim Ryan's tenure. And since he's gone, like, this game was done by the time Jim Ryan was like leaving, right? So You know, they're going to put it out, but the attention to it isn't there because it was his idea to push all these live service games out there. And this game, like this, I'm actually annoyed at the idea of like what live service is. This is just a competitive online shooter. There's no paid battle pass, no at launch, no microtransactions at all. It was just pay $40, like Overwatch 1 when it came out. Pay $40. This is the game, and it's a solid, incredibly fun online shooter. Like this is the kind of shit that people actually have been clamoring for. Hey, we don't want our games full of microtransactions and battle passes. We just want a fun game with a clean UI that's fun to play online. That's what this is. And then people shut all over it or don't even bother trying it. Like that's Fortnite in many ways, obviously, you know, not purposely, but killed competitive shooting games. Like every competitive shooter now has to, unless it's a like Call of Duty, but any new IP has to be PvP, free to play, microtransactions, paid battle pass. That is the reality now. Like they killed the ability for any proper just $40 game to come out and be a competitive shooter. It has to be free to play. It has to be full of garbage, and the UI has to be trash. Like that's which is one, like I can't. This is what turns me off of so many free to play games. Is the UI is so insane. Bad. Even Call of Duty, which you have to buy unless it's Warzone. But like I pre-ordered Black Ops because I haven't played Call of Duty in a few years. It looked good. I like the whole movement around it. I enjoyed the beta of what I played of it over the weekend. A lot of fun. But I pre-ordered this game. I paid for it. Why is my screen? Why are the first like 3 screens? Hey, want to buy this? Want to buy this? Want to buy this? Then I got to log into Black Ops from the Call of Duty main menu. I don't want to play Warzone. Wow. I don't want to play anything else. Load Black Ops for me and fuck everything else. There's so much of our games are now. There's this thick layer of capitalism over all of it. I just want to turn on the goddamn game, press 2 buttons, and be in a match.
David, I think can't play the original Modern Warfare from 2019 now because of what you're saying. You can't play the 2019 version of COD because they put it all in the player. So people have bought this to try and play campaign. Then it's downloading like 300 gigs of other shit. So I never played the campaign. Apparently it's a good campaign, but now I can't go back and even play that. So it's just like the whole thing is just insane. But to keep it more on Concord, sorry Zed, do you want to say something quick as well? I was gonna shoot over to Mike just to ask him about.
Well, I was gonna say, did you guys ever hear of a game called Rumbleverse?
Yes.
No.
So my friend developed that game. His name was Keats. He did Dive Kick, right? And Rumbleverse was his like pet project.
Dive Kick? Wait, Dive Kick?
Yeah, you ever put
me and my 3-year-old son play Dive Kick.
You know that I'm the voice of Kick in that game, right?
Shut up! No way.
Yeah, I'm the voice of Kick in that game. Yeah,
that's so wild.
Yeah, that's me doing a bunch of Will Smith lines. So like,
oh my god,
he did Rumbleverse because Rumbleverse is a fighting game. It's 100% a fighting game, and so like it was something that he like really believed in, and he worked really hard, and bunch of people liked it at Jump. It got really really good reviews and everything like that. But there was like no post support that was like really pushing the game to like brand new users. There was just that initial push, and then it was just expected to kind of like metastasize from there, just get new people. And the game shut down. You can't play it anymore. And there are so many people who loved that game who were just like, why is this not? And that was a game that was marketed well up front and then still bombed. I think the issue with live service is that because it is just inherently tied to studio wants and monetization, it's so tied to it that finding the right balance is hard because it just becomes a shop after a while, right? B, like trying to figure out a way for it to grow organically while still meeting, because you're going to lose money originally if you're trying to fight in this competitive market to get people to just play your game over and over and over again. Getting that to work is such a slog that if you have a lot of development time, people are like, well, we don't have enough budget to market this or whatever. We don't want to put too much into it, and the game will just die very quickly. I mean, like, remember the finals came out? The finals was an amazing game.
I was playing that before. I was playing that in between the Concord beta and Concord coming out because I needed like a gap to fill.
Yeah, here's the thing. Helldivers 2 was a fucking massive success, and now it's going through some shit because there was a couple bad like decisions and patches and everything like that.
Yeah,
it's such a difficult. Of course, there's a difficult tightrope to walk on all of these games to make it work, and you are fighting the odds the second you drop. So
Yeah.
having no plan is a death sentence for any game. Like, especially Concord, you're a big flagship Sony title. You don't have a plan when you drop. I don't even know about a fucking beta. You know, like, you don't have a giant review about, oh, this game's coming out. How are you gonna weather that storm? Whatever becomes like a nice to have becomes a necessity when you are gonna be always on, always needing people to buy stuff. You don't have a battle pass or microtransactions. That's great for most people, but you don't have any monetization strategy besides buy this $40 game and they're going to sell you more.
They were going to
stuff.
launch a microtransaction store in October. And I guess they're going to sell stuff there.
So
like they had
not
they
that
had a plan laid
that's a
out for
good thing. It's just like you don't have any strategy for that to keep your game afloat. Like something's up.
Sony, the publisher, didn't. The developer did have. They already had plans laid out for updates for October, and in January they had like a third as well that they were teasing. But so they had plans to roll out new characters, new maps. But in terms of this was again, it's all on Sony. It's I think announcing it with the CG trailer was the biggest mistake. They should have announced it. There was a gameplay explainer that came out like a week before the game came out. They should have launched the announcement with that, because that explains what the game actually is, why it's fun. And then talk about the the story stuff, but don't lean on that. When the game itself is what is the draw.
Yeah. Well, I was just gonna, because Mike obviously not interested at all, so I want to give my thoughts on it as someone who did play it as well. But Mike, I don't want to keep out the conversation.
I also just woke up, so don't take my attempt to kind of come back to consciousness as a disinterest.
I want an unfiltered monologue for Black Mid when we get to it. But just before I give my thoughts and talk about what they've been talking about. So for Concord, I'm just assuming for you, no chance in hell you'd even touch this. Even if it was meant to be good, it just feels like for someone like you, there's nothing David could have said to make you ever even play this. So is it just like hero shooters aren't for you? Like the aesthetics just, very cartoony? Like what is it? Or you just
I'm just not
from slot games?
No, I'm not a big fan of shooters. I used to really be into them, but I'm just not. And especially if they're online shooters, I'm extra not into them, just because it really takes a lot of time to get good, to compete against people. And I feel like I don't know. I enjoy single player campaigns, like some of the Call of Duties, even Battlefield 3. Like I played through those and I really like them. But the online component, to me, I feel like you really have to play a lot to get good. In general, competitive online games just aren't my cup of tea. So it's not necessarily anything against Concord if it had like maybe a story that might draw me in a single player campaign. But since it didn't, it just wasn't really something that I was interested in.
What was the last online shooter you played though? Because like skill-based matchmaking, I think has helped make shooters more accessible, because it's now like when you log into Call of Duty,
I don't know if that's necessarily if it works.
Right? Like it purposely matches you with someone at your skill level.
If it works,
say, The Last of Us Online, like the first one that came out on PS3. That was the last time I played online.
That was really good.
And I enjoyed it, but even having felt pretty confident after playing the single player campaign, it just didn't really appeal to me to play online a lot. It's just never really been my thing.
And speaking of live service, that was dropped. The new factions was dropped, and Sony really that is really something special. Like people still play Last of Us 1 factions because it's so unique. And then I would have take all the money for Marathon, Concord, should have just stuck that, give Bungie, like make them work on the Last of Us multiplayer, revive that, because that's a moneymaker. The season 2 is coming out next year. Like that's what it does, like blows my mind. But also I want to give like my little take, David, just as someone who does like shooters a lot more than Mike on Concord. So yeah, I literally only played it because I felt like bad that I wasn't giving it attention and you were recommending it so much. So I was about to like do something else. I was like, all right, I need to play this so me and David can talk about it, because I feel bad if I just ignore it. So I downloaded the beta, and the thing is, I love shooters. I don't love hero shooters. That sort of arena-based multiplayer. So like you were saying, story, but that's the weird thing. Those animated cartoons I sent you, they were so much better than the actual story in the game. I don't know if people realize there is animated stuff, like maybe I wouldn't call it Edge Runner style, but it's like kind of in that trend of like cool animated shorts about the game. And I got so much more out of just watching a couple of them than I did from anything in the beta, like cutscenes and stuff, like you're saying. So that's a massive fumble there. In terms of the actual gameplay, I know you didn't get to talk about it too much because we were talking about all the drama around it. I actually really like how each class kind of represents kind of like a different first-person shooter. So I played the soldier. He reminded me of a character from Killzone or something, or just like Call of Duty. It's like look down your sights, have grenades. I really liked the massive like woman with the chain gun who's sadly been on all the racist thumbnails saying like,
I know
they're
going after her, of course.
Yeah, but not so much about her design, but the gameplay is cool of just like having these characters who have all these different abilities. Like that's the medic kind of. So you have like the healing abilities, and then the actual proper medic is pretty good offensively. So I liked all this stuff. I liked the gameplay. I wasn't so big on the maps, to be honest. I didn't think they're that good. I think they're pretty bland and too much open space. So I know you're meant to like use the cover systems and like one person can create the cover and stuff. Yeah, but just for me, it was a bit more like you'd run around a corner, have such big open space, 2 people, 2-on-1, you're done for basically. There's no way you can really maneuver yourself out of that with most of the classes. So I thought it was very good. My main problem, of course, with everyone, the aesthetic. Like, I think nowadays, have you guys seen Ghost Runner and Ghost Runner 2? It's like this cyberpunk free running game.
Yeah.
And I know cyberpunk is being a bit overdone now, but every cyberpunk game, there was a new one that came out. It's called like Neo Berlin something. Looks kind of shit, to be honest, but like the aesthetic draws people in straight away. So like, oh, this aesthetic is something that's so popular. It inherently draws people in. With Concord and Destiny has a good aesthetic as well. Like it feels a little bit like Halo. It's a little bit serious, but it is, kind of cartoony. But I think contrasted the enemies with like the realistic backdrops, it works really well. With Concord, it's just a bit kind of weird because all the characters look so realistic because it's like an Unreal, is it 5 game?
Yeah.
Unreal 5. So they all look actually like real people. But then like
it looks like visually looks amazing.
Yeah, it does look nice. But like the soldier, like it looks like the Michelin Man, and then the soldier, the medic's like the Michelin Man.
I think you're trying to get to the artistic design is not there. Like the artistic aesthetic is there, and I think that like finish what you're saying. I have a point after that.
Like it's fine for me. It's just I understand that clearly it didn't stand out. Like I think that was the biggest issue, is that it just didn't. The visuals alone didn't capture people. But like I've been walking around like. I'm noticing stuff in the maps now that I didn't notice before. Just looking at the sky. I know this doesn't matter in the game, but the skybox.
The sky is nice.
If you just like go to the edge of a map, look like zoom in at the skybox, you can see like waterfalls wisping down in the background. Like there's ships flying overhead.
Halo
it looks
vibes,
amazing.
Sure. Yeah. No. So like, I just don't know what they were thinking with this art style. Like, I don't want to like jump on. Like you're saying, I appreciate it's very hard to make a game, but it's just like. It comes across so generic, and honestly, like I just don't blame anyone for not playing this, because for me personally, David, if you didn't like it, I wouldn't have played it because it looks like any other free-to-play garbage game. Like
I don't blame people for not playing it. I blame Sony for not properly marketing it. And
but I don't think the marketing would have saved this. I think it looks so generic. It's so out of time as well. It's like a game from 2018. Today,
I don't know. Apex does Apex Legends look like
no, but Apex has that Titanfall. It has a Titanfall legacy.
Yeah, Apex
has a Titanfall legacy 100%, but visually, I just think it doesn't like whatever.
No, well, but Apex came out when Apex came out. There was a huge dearth in like the biggest competition that Fortnite had was PUBG. So if you're going between Fortnite, PUBG, and then this new game comes out, by the way, it has Overwatch specials and shit like that, because that was the big thing, was marketed as like, oh, it's a hero shooter plus a battle royale. All of a sudden you have a huge, and the gunplay is good, and it's by fucking
the ping system as well, it introduced for like mainstream. Like no one had used on the ping before.
Exactly. So there's all of that, and I think like I can't stress enough, like aesthetic is so important. Again, I'm coming from fighting games. We had a dark ages of fighting games like for the last like 5 or 6 years until Street Fighter 6 came out, because Street Fighter 5 was not good. It was like, it looked like a claymation movie, right? And so much of the aesthetic of how just even watching that game play, people just said, oh, it's just whatever, right? And every game can't like, and then you would see games like Guilty Gear Strive come out and Dragon Ball FighterZ. Those games look fun and flashy and big. And so when Street Fighter 6 came out, they doubled, tripled, quadrupled down. Like, okay, the aesthetic has to be good. The vibe of this game has to be really interesting. There's a single player mode right? Because Mike, you
Yeah.
were saying like you don't want to play shooters. I think it's also
Mhm.
because you don't want to jump into a lobby, just get headshot. You're like, okay, I have to fucking just eat shit for
Right.
hours until I get good, right? So
Yeah.
there is something
Yeah.
for you to do and at least like get something. Like I told you when we started this, like I'm playing Call of Duty again. I didn't jump into multiplayer because I know I'm going to get headshot. I just want to fucking play a little bit of the shooting gallery of the campaign, and then
Mhm.
maybe if I want to, I can touch base on the main game. Like I think that there needs to be a more like aesthetic is so fucking important, and we like to say that a game can have like a really nice coat of paint and it can be shitty gameplay wise, sure, but those games sell, and a lot of those games that have a really nice coat of paint eventually get fixed, right? Like Cyberpunk 2077, which looked like shit, but it had like a really nice aesthetic. It had really cool ideas, and then they fixed it, and now Phantom Liberty was this big fucking amazing thing.
It's
Right?
it's just wild to me that like you're right, like that a game that looks good but plays like shit can be saved, but a game that plays great and isn't visually
Yeah.
appealing can't be saved. Like it's just
But I think the quality
like
sometimes
it shouldn't be
underneath
that
is
way for games,
important.
but it unfortunately is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
just I was gonna just sorry, you go Zed, and then I'll finish my thoughts. And then should we? We'll
just
throw it over
adding
to
on to that,
Black Myth
multiverses.
afterwards.
Like Multiverses was a game with all of the right ideas, and it's bombing right now because the game plays like kind of squishy, right? It doesn't play
Yeah.
like Smash Brothers, and like it had a really great aesthetic, but the aesthetic has dropped significantly because the market has changed significantly, right? I think the other part of this is that the game probably came out at a time where look, people were releasing Overwatch clones like 2 or 3 years ago. And now what they're releasing now is very, very different. Like even Deadlock is a little bit different than I think it's a MOBA. It's kind of like
it's
a
a
MOBA.
MOBA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like that's significantly different. Also, why would Valve want it? They already did Team Fortress 2. You don't need to. You're good, Valve. Like so, like there needs to be. I think like the game was probably in development for quite a while. Came out at a time where people are not immediately interested in that kind of a shooter like currently, right? That doesn't mean it can't work, and that doesn't mean that marketing couldn't make up for some of the issues. But I think it looks kind of generic, and the fact that Cav is saying like he wouldn't have played it because if you didn't like it, I think says a massive amount about where the miscalculation is, and it's unfortunate because all of those people worked really, really hard on this game, trying to be like, if we make the gameplay just a little bit better, if we do this, it's going to be a lot better. We can't, all the visual assets are locked. We can't fucking just do giant changes, but hopefully the gameplay will carry it through, and they don't have any push behind them. I mean, you're pretty much just walking the fucking plank at that point.
I mean,
right?
even I said I wouldn't have tried it off the CG trailer. I tried it because I was just curious. I was like morbidly curious of what this game was.
And because you play fucking everything as well. Like you're not the one person who plays literally anything and everything.
Yeah, and I play
people,
everything. And even I almost didn't play it.
So just to end we can touch on this again later if we have time and we get through everything. So yeah, I would love to have a longer conversation about YouTubers and how they influence gaming. Like I tweeted the other day or yesterday about, and just some like reviewers and stuff like we're talking about it as well. It's just like a game lives and dies now by streamers and influencers. And on that note, I made a video on this yesterday on my main channel. 2 games that have been pitted against each other for some bizarre reason is Concord and Black Myth Wukong because of politics, where Concord is left-wing SJW propaganda because of pronouns, but a game made from a Chinese dev, nothing wrong with that, but has guidelines where you can't talk about the coronavirus, Chinese development studios, or any politics or feminist propaganda. That is an apolitical gem, and censorship is good. But that's kind of just all in the background of this discussion. So Zed and Mike, you both play this, and Mike, I want a massive, like, unfiltered, you don't even stop because you've just been sitting there listening to us talk about shooters. So I'll help you structure it. So to people watching, like, there's a lot of misinformation. Like, what actually is this game? People all thought it was like a Dark Souls clone. To me, it looks like Cuphead in terms of, it looks like a boss rush game. And then please also talk about the story. Is there like political themes in this? Is it an apolitical gem for the gamers, or is there something deeper? And like if you can notice anything different, like is there a difference with like a Chinese studio making something? Like, does it feel any different? And Zed as well, same questions for you, but let's start with Mike. So just like and just compare it to what you've been playing recently, because I know you've been on Neo 2 and Elden Ring as well. So yeah, just everything you want to say, but I think answering like what is this game, I think would be helpful for the people watching.
Yeah, so there is a lot of misinformation about the game. Some people say it's not a Souls-like. I would argue it is a Souls-like. It is exactly like Souls games. The one difference is that it's more accessible because there's no penalty for death. So you don't lose any souls, or in this game, it's will. But I mean, there's not bonfires, but there's points where you can burn incense. Incense. Is that the word? I'm blanking on it. Sorry, still waking.
Incense.
Yeah,
It's incense. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's more of a boss rush game. There's not a lot of like in between, but there is, and there's some. It was kind of pitched in reviews as a more linear experience, and that's true because you go chapter to chapter. But the chapters are massive. Like the worlds are huge. There's some weird elements about this. Like there's a lot of like invisible walls. So you think you might want to climb a mountain, and it's like, oh no, you can't. There's an invisible wall. But the story itself is just Journey to the West. So if you know anything about that, it's Chinese culture, Chinese lore. It's beautiful. In the second chapter, there's like this headless guy that sings to you, and as he's serenading you,
I've seen that.
He's singing in Chinese. It's beautiful. Love it so much. So it's a pretty game. It's super fun. I think that if you like a Souls game, you're gonna like this. If you like God of War, you might like this. That opening sequence is very God of War-y to me. And a lot of the special abilities remind me of God of War. But I think for all intents and purposes, this is a pretty standard Souls game. It deviates in the fact that it's like more accessible, but it's super fun. I've been really enjoying it. I'm on chapter 3. I think there's like 6 chapters. And the bosses are pretty easy. I don't think it would be easy for somebody who's like not accustomed to Soulsborne type games. But like in terms of just trying to compare them, comparing this to Neo 2, Neo 2 clapped my fucking cheeks. I mean, fuck that game. I mean, and there's just not really.
It's like Ninja Gaiden developers too, which is like
it is,
fucking,
which
is so much harder.
Yeah, and there's no really see the way that I play like Souls games is I like to grind, so that way I kind of play on easy mode in a sense, right? Like I farm a bunch of shit, and then when I get to the boss, I'm caked up. But you know, with Neo, you can't really do that. It's not very efficient to grind because you end up getting a lot more Amrita, which is the currency to level up, just playing the game. So you don't really have an incentive to grind, even though I tried, because that's like what I try to do. But like comparing that, coming off of Neo 2 to Black Myth Wukong, it's like night and day. It's so much easier. So like if you don't like Souls games, you're probably not going to like this. But if you like the gameplay of Souls games and you like the combat and you like a little bit of a challenge, then this might be for you if Souls games turned you off because of the difficulty. It's still challenging, to be clear, but not having a penalty for death, I think, makes a pretty huge difference.
Have you played the Jedi games? Just because you said it was like God of War.
Oh, yeah, I played the first Jedi game. I really, really enjoyed that.
Is it like that in any way? Because that's obviously like Souls inspired. It's hard if you want it to be, but it's more like the combat is not just. It feels more fluid, and it's more like this is the way you're going to play, not like any freedom to like customize your playstyle or anything like that.
Yeah, I think it's more along those lines. I will say the game there's certainly a difficulty, but this game gives you a lot of tools to help you out. Like you have different spells, you can immobilize the enemy, including bosses where they freeze for a few seconds. You can I forgot what the name of the ability is, but you can have multiple versions of yourself, wailing on the enemy at the same time.
Yeah.
You have a fire spell that gives you your own separate health bar. So there's a lot more tools to help you out. So that way, if you're kind of one of these players that doesn't want to take the time to learn the moves of the boss and you just want to spam and get super greedy, this game kind of allows you to do that. You don't have to be as careful. But yeah, I'd say, it's different than Jedi Fallen Survivor or the Fallen Order is what I'm thinking of. But in it's Soulsy in a different way, but it's kind of hard to explain because I definitely think it's in the genre of Souls. Like if you go to Steam, it says for players who like Elden Ring and Sekiro, which makes sense, right?
I'm
curious to know Zed's thoughts.
I disagree on the fact that it's a Souls-like. I think it's God of War. Like I'm 99% sure it's God of War because honestly,
I think that's
like
fair.
what you described about, so pretty much since God of War 2018, right? Or 2016, I think it was, right?
2018.
2018. Yeah.
Yeah.
Since God of War 2018, like that's been the God of War. Like you don't lose your shit when you die,
Mhm.
right? You have checkpoints, right? You upgrade your stuff through a pause menu, right? You know, the boss battles are enormous. It's boss battle to boss battle to boss. Like I think for like the boss battles are giant spectacles, right? So I think what probably happened was a Chinese studio saw God of War and thought they liked the spectacle of this, and they saw God of War like 3, right? Because it feels very like the combat feels like has the visceral feel of one of the older God of War games. Because if you play one of the older God of War games, it's fun, but the combat is a little bit squishy when you hit something, right? When you do the heavy attack, it's kind of a slow motion, kind of come down, right? Like it's an overhead. So like I just see so many similarities between the old God of War games and this one. The upgrade system, like the way it weaves in Chinese mythology. This is God of War Greek mythology. I think it's very, very much so. That's what they're trying to go for. They have little elements of like Devil May Cry and stuff like that in there, but I think that's the primary focus. I think also the attacks aren't on shoulder buttons, which is like a big thing for Souls-like games. Like, right? Like I don't know if I've
But
played
the
a
same is true
Souls-like.
for Neo as well. They're not
Right.
shoulder buttons, but
Well,
you know.
I give Neo a little bit of a pass mainly because they did Ninja Gaiden and they're just gonna be like, okay, well, we'll do Ninja Gaiden, but with fucking souls, all right, you
Mhm.
idiots. Like, I think that's them begrudgingly doing it and then knocking it out of the park and then showing people how it's done. But like, I think the game is good. I think it's fun. I think if you're going into it expecting a Souls-like, it's disappointing. And what I've noticed a lot is like people like Moist Critical and some other people really like this game. And I think, yeah, there's definitely, I always like to give a game the benefit of the doubt. There's definitely an appeal to it. There's definitely some fun there. I do think that in terms of like the combat depth for a Souls-like game is very neutral based, right? Where I mean, again, I'm sorry I keep referencing fighting games so much, but like fighting games have a lot of neutral, right? Where you're trying to like suss out ranges, right? And then throw your moves and then combo things in. Like, I think it has less neutral there than those games. It has a lot more dodging. A lot of this game is like wait for the attack, dodge, like throw in, right? Like it's identified as. So that's why it just feels a lot easier compared to other Souls-like games. I think the spells are very cool. The power fantasy is very cool there. I do wish that the combat was a little bit more like varied because a lot of times I feel like, okay, well, the reason I'm losing this fight is because I just have to like dodge way more, or I have to, I don't really get to have that like sandbox like I want to have, in a Souls game or a game like Elden Ring. I feel like I have a sandbox or multiple different options when I'm fighting a boss of how to deal with it, right? I feel like I have 1 to 2 approaches that are the correct approach. And if you don't do the correct approach here, you're going to fucking die, right? And I mean, there's different bosses in different games that are like that, but like every boss in this game is like that, where you really kind of have to do it one way or the highway, and your playstyle is very, very similar in that regard. And when it does vary, it doesn't vary immensely. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a fun game. It has like that power fantasy element. Those spells are, again, like are really, really fun to use. But I just wish it was more varied. And like the biggest barometer I have is I have a friend named Li Joe who fucking loves Souls games, and he played this game for about an hour and just immediately returned. He's like, I'm not feeling this, right? Because the
Really?
combat just wasn't suited. Yeah, I don't think
the combat is not as tight as a Souls game for sure. But to be fair, they've had so many different games to iterate on and improve. So it's like comparing, a really refined product that took time to get better to this studio was like a mobile game developer. So for me, for this being like their first try at like a AAA type game, it was really impressive. To your point though about it not being a Souls game and with the combat combat really trying to get you to play in a certain way. I think that to me is why it felt so much like a Souls game, because the way that you have to approach the bosses in this game is how I typically approach bosses in other Souls games. I always play as a dex build or a quality build, so I'm always dodging. I don't use shields as much. So to me, it felt right at home. But I think that there's something to your point about it being a lot like God of War. Like, as I said, it really felt God of War in the beginning, especially with that opening sequence. It reminded me of the first fight in God of War. So I think it's a little bit of a blend of the two of them, right? Where it's God of War, it's a little bit of Souls. I think that the combat is super fun. It doesn't feel as refined and tight as it needs to be, but a great start. And I could see this being really, really good if they chose to do like additional games in this genre. I think for their first try, they did great. They didn't nail it, but it's still super, super impressive.
Wait, real quick. I had a question, Mike. Mike, did you have some weird feeling about the dodge timing on this game? Because
Yes.
so I'm not the only person who's feeling that. Like, because like I feel like I went online to check after I fight, because one of the first bosses you fight is this like fucking snake guy in a bunch of water. And like and he's dodging, and like again, like I come from games where you have to like do combos with 1/60th of a second, or you have to parry right as something's hitting you, and I'm not hitting this dodge. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? I'm not hitting this dodge. And I think one of two things are happening in this game, which I think is a little bit fucked up. Which is, one, I think there's a little bit of lag.
I think so too.
On the like, even on the attack, there's just a little bit of input delay.
I've noticed
which
that,
is hard. But also, I think the game has moments where it slows down like a frame or two for effect, and that changes the timing of everything because it doesn't store inputs. So like, you'll dodge correctly and then get it, because I thought it was like, it can't, like, is it me? So then I started to try to dodge like 1 or 2 seconds ahead, right? And I was doing it more consistently, but then every so often I would notice when he does a big attack, the game would just like freeze for like a split second, and then I would miss the timing. And I'm like, that I feel is like, I'm not trying to shit on this game. Like, I think it's a really good game, but I think that's a really annoying design choice. Like, that shouldn't be that like, if the goal of the game is like, yo, you have to really get down your timing. By the way, fuck your timing. We're gonna slow the game down to such an infinitesimal degree that you can't. It's not reactable, right? There's gonna be some crazy guy who does a no damage run through this, but he's gonna be predicting like majority of that run in order to make sure that happens. And it shouldn't be prediction. It should be a little bit of reaction too. You know what I'm saying?
I wouldn't necessarily say that it feels like the game slows down per se. I mean, there are some technical issues with the game, especially like in the 3rd chapter. That's where I'm at right now, and I'm starting to notice it. But during fights, I think that the controls just feel a little bit muddy. Like, you notice the input delay for sure, whereas you do not notice that with Elden Ring. And that input delay, even if it's like a fraction of a second, can fuck you up because you're supposed to be very precise. But I absolutely notice what you're talking about here, and this is something that I noticed with like a game like Lords of the Fallen. A lot of people hated that game. I enjoyed it, but it feels slower. Like, when you press a button, there's time before your character does the move on the screen. So you kind of adapt with time, and it doesn't become an issue necessarily. I don't know if it's a design choice. I think it probably is. Whereas something like Neo is very quick. You press the button, and your character is on it. But there's also differences there as well. It feels different than Elden Ring. So this game has its own feel, and I don't necessarily know if it's like an error. It could be a design choice to make it feel a little bit more slower because it has to be deliberate and whatnot. But at the same time, when you design bosses that are really quick and you have to be on your toes, it does feel weird that a dodge doesn't feel right sometimes. I think part of the problem is that the dodge timing in this game really varies a lot for bosses. Most of the time, I think I'm dodging too soon. When you have to wait a little bit, you don't really know when they're gonna strike. Like, they'll broadcast what they're gonna do, and then you want to dodge, but you have to wait a little bit. I mean, that's the same for Souls games as well. But I do agree with you that there is something a little bit frustrating with the controls. Like, it doesn't feel great, and I think that if they took some time to tweak it in the next game, it could be perfect.
Yeah, I think if they add more impact on some of the attacks, and if they get that like input delay down, solid game, like super. It'll make the game so much better. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Someone in my chat said if you're on PS5, put it on 30 frames mode. So I guess that's quality mode, because the 60 frames mode uses frame generation, which increases delay. Thanks to that, Jimmy.
Wait,
super chat in the chat.
Wait, the 60 frame. Maybe it's the frame. So I have a 204. I have a fucking expensive 240 hertz monitor, like no input delay. You know, there's magicians behind my fucking computer making sure that nothing goes there, because I'm so like, because the competitive games and stuff I play. So like I'm all about that. But if that makes a lot of sense if it's like a graphical thing that's going, because that really was throwing me for a loop, man. Yeah, that's really throwing me for a loop, man. Because I have a PC and I'm like, oh, why the fuck is this slowing? Like it's got to be horrible for people on PS5 if that's the case, you know?
Yeah.
So
I'm playing on PC too. I haven't looked at that. I should probably try to look at that, because that might make me feel better as well with the feel. Because I'm with you, Zed. Like there's something about the controls that don't feel as refined. Then again, I feel like we've been like just coming off of Shadow of the Erdtree. We've kind of been spoiled, but like the best of the best. I mean, this is the creme de la creme, obviously. So like everything just feels amazing.
Well, Shadow of the Erdtree and Neo, which is like those two studios are just known for basically like. Super hyper fast. David, Cap, did you guys ever play Ninja Gaiden?
Yeah, the original.
Gaiden.
I've always sucked at those games though. Like I've always bounced off them. Like I try to get into them. I'm not good.
I wasn't great for a while, but like the reason I like Ninja Gaiden 1 and 2 is just because it feels so good when you press square and you just cut into something. Like it's like, oh, I'm right there.
It's immediate. Yeah,
it's instant, right? And I mean, like for the impact feels good, the sound feels good, like everything is there, and I feel like like From Software. With the Armored Core 2 and all these other games, nails that. Team Ninja nails that. Capcom sometimes nails that. I don't know if these developers have nailed it yet. When they nail it, I think you're gonna get like a really, really good product, as long as you don't talk about feminist propaganda. If you if you mention anything about Gloria Steinem, get the fuck out of here. All right?
They're coming for you.
No Steinem in Black Myth Wukong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Before we change topics to, I'm sure Kaz will talk about Star Wars Outlaws. While we were recording, my collector's item arrived.
Oh,
damn!
Worth a lot in like 2 years.
I'm keeping this baby sealed. It's not going to be opened. It's going to be on my shelf for decades. I'll have a story to tell about my favorite game I never got to play.
30 years later, your kid's going to go, Dad, what is this? It's like, oh, son, you don't even know.
Let me tell you about Concord.
Hey, listen, here's the thing. Maybe in a couple of years, you can sell that on eBay for like, 10 grand, because look at the way that people are trying. What is that game from last year? The Day After? People wanted that game after it was dead.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
that was
the online market.
Though,
fuck.
It was,
Why didn't we talk about Anthem? Because Anthem had the same issue, didn't it?
In terms of
Anthem,
what?
Anthem was successful, though.
Anthem's still
I think it made Anthem made money as well, and you can buy it.
It's still running, isn't it?
Wait, but Anthem's offline, isn't it?
I think it's still running.
I don't think so.
Oh, really?
I think someone said Anthem was the 15th best-selling game of that year. Was the top-selling game in the month it came out.
Yeah, that game was hyped up for so long.
They're saying Concord
comparison.
Mike, what is that picture with your microphone off, bro? You got what is that picture, bro?
That's his mom, Carrie Lake. Have you heard of her?
So David, just because they were talking about it, because I don't want to just move on to mine yet without you giving your say. So for me, I have no interest in Black Myth Wukong. When I found out it was more like a boss rush, and Souls games I mean, if it's more like God of War or Jedi, I can see myself liking it. But something more like Cuphead mixed with Dark Souls, I'm not feeling. So how do you feel about it? Like you
Cuphead is a weird comparison.
It's not. It's a weird thing for you to say Cuphead. It's not like a boss rush like that. It's basically you have a bunch of fodder enemies in between. But the thing is that the boss battles are really big. Like they're really, really big. Like so they're like the spectator pieces. So you do have like palette cleansers in between for you to like kind of go through stuff, right? And you have big open areas where you can explore and find new things. But pretty much the game is structured to where like you'll go through it just has less fodder enemies than most games, right? So like what you will usually do like a 5 to 10 minute experience before you reach a boss. It'll be like more like 4 minutes, right?
Okay.
And you'll just go through enemies and then you'll get to the boss. But again, like that area is explorable. So I think their idea is like go through a bunch of enemies and then get your ass kicked by this boss and then go back, kill a bunch of enemies, level up, and then go kill the boss. Right? I think that's what it's structured like. If it was like Cuphead, I think it would be that's what I'm saying. It's like God of War, right? Where it's more of like an open-ended kind of, because in God of War 2018, it's kind of open-ended where you're going, but it's just the boss to boss moments are much higher, which I think is part of the appeal of the game. It's like the boss battles are really cool. They're crazy.
Amazing.
Yeah, they're really amazing spectacles, and like when it's all hitting, it's really fun, and that's part of the power fantasy is like the fact that like that's one thing I do like about the game is like some of those spells are really powerful, and they should be. A lot of times when you get spells in Souls games and other games, it's just like what the fuck is this? Is this like, this doesn't stagger you? This doesn't do anything. And the fact that this game has a thing where basically you can freeze an enemy for a few seconds and then just wail on them. Doing that is so fucking satisfying sometimes, and then watching the boss flinch back, like, what the fuck was that? Right? Yeah. That's really fun to do. It gives me that, if you ever played Monster Hunter, that feel of Monster Hunter where, oh my God, I have this giant sword. It takes forever to swing. And then you hit a monster finally and they flinch like, what the fuck was that? Right? That's really cool to me.
Yeah, I'll say pulling off a heavy attack feels amazing in this game. Yeah. Because you have focus points. So, you charge it up basically, and the more you charge it up, the more damage your heavy attack is going to do. And if you could pull off a fully charged heavy attack, you will fuck up a boss, which feels great because a lot of these bosses, you're wailing on it, but you're not doing a ton of damage. But really, you do damage when you pull off a full. Yeah, if you can pull off a full combo, you will do a lot of damage, because if you do light attack, you'll finish with like a big heavy attack. But yeah, I think that the boss rush element of this game is kind of what makes it really unique and what does differentiate it from other Souls games, and does add to the challenge, to be honest, because like last night I was playing chapter 3 and I just finished a boss. Wasn't very difficult. And I beat it on my first try, barely took any damage, but I used up all my mana. And then I explore a little bit more and I fall into another boss. I'm like, oh shit, well now I don't have any mana. Almost beat her, died, but it was because I didn't have any mana to do any of my immobilize. So I was just dodging the whole time, couldn't really pull off any attacks. So it adds to the I think the excitement of it, and the fact that the bosses are just so well designed and so fun, just adds to like what makes this game so special. The in-between is a little bit dull, I'll be honest. Exploring is fun. Exploring is definitely fun. You find some things. You want to level up your gourds, which is like your Estus flasks, so you can have more health. But really, I think the best parts are the boss battles. They're just so much fun.
I can tell this game's not for me because I'm like a weird person that I don't like boss fights. It's like it's too much pressure, too much anxiety. I don't need that in my life. I don't think discover.
I will say this: I don't think it's like one of those pressure-filled. But I think if you like think of God of War, like the spectacle of God of War boss fights for the majority of the game, right? Like that's it's like cut out a lot of the filler in between. Big moments, and it's just big moment. Well, no, I do too.
That's why I like God of War is the filler. Yeah, the boss fights are I could take or leave. I don't care.
Oh,
I got you. Easy though.
Really?
The boss fights in God of War.
They look nice, but it's like that's not what my draw to the game is at all. Like
I got you.
Yeah, I'm the same as you, David. Like bosses in Dark Souls, hate them. I'd rather play a whole Dark Souls game without the bosses. I prefer fighting the mobs. And yeah, too much pressure and too frustrating as well at points. And like we said in another podcast, when you get a bit older, you value your time with gaming. So just hitting that wall of a boss you can't do, it just makes you want to quit. And that's what made me quit Elden Ring. So just after a while, I'm like, yeah, I can't defeat that fox thing in that magical school. And I'm like, I'm done. Like I don't even know how I'd go about it. And that's after I exhausted like going different ways. So, like if I met a boss I couldn't defeat, I'd go another way. And then I was like, I've already done that, and I was like, 20 hours, I'm good. I don't want to do this anymore.
That's exactly when I stopped playing.
Yeah. So it's like why I like Jedi so much is because you can just ramp up the difficulty, where you can get better and better through multiple playthroughs, and then you get to the boss and you're like, I am ready for this. Where with Dark Souls, and I don't want to talk about this discourse for this one, but just that's why I like Rise of the Ronin as well, which is obviously the next game from this Neo studio. It's because you can just level it up as you go through it. So now I've put it on like the hardest difficulty, but I started on normal and it was kicking my ass for a bit. But you get better and better with Elden Ring and the others. There's no time for me apart from punishment and just like spending way too much time on one boss to get better. So I don't want to get into that discourse because we do like a whole podcast on it. But yeah, like that's why I didn't check out Black Myth, just because I was like, I'm just going to get so frustrated, and I probably think I wasted my money as well.
I don't think I think something that's fair to say, like, and I know you don't want to get into the discourse, but I think it's a fair thing to say that you want your experience to be like, you value your experience over the challenge. I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that in the sense that, like, yes, this challenge is there and it takes time to beat, but I don't have that time. There's things that I would rather spend time into, right? And
Absolutely.
like that's what we talk about with, that's what Mike was mentioning with like multiplayer games, right? Like, yeah, I can probably get really good at this, but it's gonna take time that I would rather spend doing other things. So that makes total sense. I do think that there is something to be said about the way Souls games, fighting games, certain types of games in general are marketed to people or talked about to people, because I feel like it obscures what the actual conceit is. Like I think the first time I talked with David and Mike about like fighting games, I was like, I think a lot of people said like, oh, I'm just going to button mash and stuff like that. Thinking that like you have to learn some secret combos or codes or frames to really get good at these games. And honestly, that's a lot of the reason why when people play these games, they prohibit themselves from trying new characters or really going down that rabbit hole. Like Tekken, like people are like, oh, I have to learn all this shit for Tekken before I jump into Tekken. But honestly, most of the time, it's a pretty simple jump when you actually go through it. And I think like with Elden Ring, a big issue that's happened is like, when you think about the game as like you can actually react to a dodge, it's a lot more fun. It's a lot easier to get into. But I do understand that idea of like, look, I don't want to like get destroyed on my day off after I've worked after I've been working for like 8 or some hours, or I have time away from my kids or something like that for a few minutes. I don't want to get obliterated, just to fucking just go back and deal with this. Like, that doesn't make me a bad person. I just want to experience something a little bit more consistent, right?
When it can be stressful too. I was stuck on the Sekiro final boss for 3 fucking days.
Yeah.
I wanted to destroy my controller, but it's like, I could have walked away, but it's like I'm this close to just beating the game.
Oh my God.
So I kept trying. Yeah. And the problem with these games is it kind of hooks you because you get a little bit closer each time and you don't really feel like it's unfair necessarily. You feel like, okay, I know what I could have done differently. It's just a matter of me pulling it off. But it is stressful. If I can't beat a boss and I don't beat it before finishing my play session, I'm thinking about it. I'm like, God damn, I got to come back to that. It is stressful. So I absolutely understand.
You don't want to revisit it because I like what you're saying. Just for a final point on this, The Witcher 3 Blood and Wine, the final boss of the whole Witcher game, like the end of the DLC, is so fucking hard on the hardest difficulty. And I was up all night just dying and dying and dying. And the loading times for The Witcher back then were ridiculous. So I was just sitting there and I was like, I cannot go to bed. I know it's the last one. I was like, I cannot go to bed until this is done. And then eventually I did have to go to bed because I was like, my brain needs to refresh and I need to come at it tomorrow. And then eventually I did it when I worked out like this basically unblockable attack, like how I could dodge it. But yeah, like that's for me is like with Elden Ring. Now I'm thinking about, I actually booted it up when the DLC came out to give it one last go. And then I realized where I was and I was like, played it for like maybe 30 minutes. And I was like, nah, like that's me done.
You're at the school.
I went away from the school to go into like the red swamp thing instead.
No.
Oh yeah, you never want to go to a swamp in in a
Kev,
Soulsborne
No, but
game.
I'd gone so far each direction.
Kev,
I had to go to the.
Listen to me. You're gonna boot it up again, and I'm gonna get you through the school. That's totally fine. By the way, like I 100% the first playthrough, like when I was figuring out, I just summoned people. People were like, "Oh, you're a pussy." I'm like, shut the fuck up. All right,
I don't like that shit when people say that.
I don't need to fucking hear
game.
you.
Of course, use it. Like, it's in the game for a reason.
Listen,
that's a big thing I think too in games. Is like a lot of times, like what I don't get about Souls, like people. Again, I play competitive, like with competitive people who like fucking play games for money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like when you tell somebody, it's like, hey, listen, you have to play this game, but you can't use summons, you can't roll, you have to let go of your Pokemon. You have to hold like a chalice in your hand and only play with one thing. I'm like, bro, if you ask anybody who plays competitive games, like if it's in a game, I'm gonna fucking do it. If I spam Hadoukens and you can't get over it, too fucking bad. Like,
it's not a dick measuring contest. Like, listen, people will think I'm not a real Souls player. I play as the cheesiest motherfucker imaginable. Okay, I use summons.
Seamless.
I try to cheese the bosses, and look, in some fucking instances, if I'm really struggling, I'll find an exploit. Like the first time I played Elden Ring, the fire giant was kicking my ass because I was a magic build and I was doing no damage to him. So guess what I did? I looked up a YouTube video where this guy was like, "Hey, you can get him stuck on a tree and then he'll fall off the cliff and die." And I did that, and I beat him.
Yeah,
came back around with a different build and I beat him.
My favorite thing in games is finding out how to break the game a little bit. I play fucking Marvel 2, and Marvel 2, like, there's that famous Marvel versus Capcom 2 video, like, you want to learn how to do a fucking infinite? And it's just this drunk guy teaching you how to do a Iron Man infinite. Like, I love that, like, crazy ass shit, dude. That's some of the best things. But no, Cav, next time you boot up that game, you hit me up, and I will get you through that.
I don't think Cav is gonna like it, if I'm being honest. I think that
that's fine.
Yeah, Souls games, if it doesn't click with you, it doesn't click with you. That's the thing.
Souls, that's so funny. Like Elden Ring clicked with me, except for the boss fights.
Exactly. I'm the exact same.
Yeah, I get that though. Because exploring the world is so much fun, but like the boss battles are difficult. You have to get through them. So yeah, I actually understand that.
The only genre where I don't mind boss fights are turn-based RPGs because it's more about strategy as opposed to like pressing something in time. Like it's not timing at all. It's just like, how do I approach this boss? Like I'm still stuck on the last boss in SMT 5 Vengeance, and even though I think this game's supposed to be a little easier than the original one, at least it has for me because I stopped playing the original 20 hours in. But it's still like it's kicking my ass, and I got to figure out like how. I guess I got to level up a little bit more, but I think I'm near where I can beat them. I just got to figure out what the strategy is to do it, and I could look it up. I can kind of just like cheese my way through it, which is fine. I wouldn't say it's cheesing through it. It's like I could get resources, information in to teach myself, but I also want to figure it out myself. Just figure out how can I beat this boss.
Oh, you want to talk about fucking crazy boss fights? Fucking Metal Gear, dude.
I was gonna say Metal Gear Rising. I cheese Sundowner. Who's like this big American guy, because if you don't get him out of his first phase, he doesn't go like insane, like flying around the map. So I cheesed him by keeping in his first phase, and I beat him that way, where it was just like, I forgot, you have to go into like the slash mode, and I didn't do that. So I did it on stream as well. And I was just feeling so good, but I was like, why would you even take him out of the first phase? He gets harder. So I just kept him like at this level. So
dude,
yeah,
Metal Gear
crazy.
Metal Gear 3, there's a scene where like all of the major bosses that you're gonna fight are there, and there's one guy who you fight in Metal Gear Solid 3 who's like a sniper, right? Okay.
Oh, spoilers, everyone, because the remake's out next year. So just little.
Sorry, spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers. Metal Gear Solid 3.
You can kill that guy before you play. So I shot him, and you see him like he's like asleep in his wheelchair, and then he wakes up. He's like, and he starts to get away, right? But I killed him. And then I got through the game. I was like, yeah, that game was really cool. The bosses were all right, but they were pretty cool. It's like, oh man, the end was a great boss fight. I was like, who's the end? He's like the old guy.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I killed him before. And he's like, and my friend was like, you missed the best boss fight of the game. Oh, what did you do?
You I was
like, oh no.
You can beat him another way in the game. You leave your PS2 off for 2 weeks, come back, and he's died of old age. That was in the original game. Like, if you quit just before and came back 2 weeks later, your calendar would be updated, and you just find him dead on the floor. I
really appreciate Kojima. That's hilarious.
Kojima's crazy, dude.
By the way, I did get the collection, the Volume 1 Metal Gear Solid collection, and I booted up the first game, and I'm gonna wait for the remake of 3. It's a little bit.
The first game is so dated.
Yeah,
Do
yeah.
3 Peace Walker, Ground Zeroes, and 5 because it's chronological,
Yeah.
same character. Because Solid Snake is a clone of the guy from the other games,
Mm-hmm.
so and I think they're better games anyway. I know people love Metal Gear 1 and 2, but I prefer the one set in the past. And
Yeah.
happy
It's impressive
birthday,
for
9 years
PS1.
old, MGS5.
Yeah,
MGS5
it's just
is
old.
crazy on
amazing.
PS1.
Is incredible.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Yeah, it's just too old. Like I couldn't play the whole thing. It was just like, okay,
Yeah,
this is.
I get it. If you're not invested already, it definitely is dated for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess we can move on to my one now. If anyone wants to like walk off and get a drink or anything while I talk about this, I totally get it because I'm definitely going to balance it with people watching and talking to you guys. I was trying to make the decision today because I was like, I love Star Wars so much. I know most of them won't know what the fuck I'm talking about. So when I talk about the context of everything, also, if anyone has any questions, I mean, you can give them to me now and I can try and answer them while I talk about the game. I played.
I hear the
8.5
stealth.
hours.
I hear there's like a lot of stealth, and I'm not really into the idea. Or no, sorry, the stealth is fine, but it's like insta. Like you get caught and it's insta fail. Like I hate that shit.
Stealth. Yeah,
So-
I hate that shit too.
So first off, the 2 questions I have are I hear there's only like kind of like one, like very few weapons in the game, and B, are you one of those woke DEI cuck bitches
Cuck soy boy.
who just want Star Wars to be about vaginas? Go.
Yeah, my question along those lines, Cav.
Actually, the actress.
Along those lines, Cav. I hear that the game is censored because the main character is not hot, and that really bugs me. Because if I'm gonna play, I want a beautiful character on the screen. So I can't play it because of that reason.
So,
But also, if it's too hot, I'm gonna feel threatened personally.
Right.
So
right.
She can't
it's
be
gotta
too
be like the
powerful. She
right
can't be too
amount.
assertive.
You got to be a
Right.
9.5. But if you're a 10, get the fuck out of here. It's unrealistic. All right.
So
You have to be.
Get
yeah, so I would say, and I made a whole video of this. Conservatives have absolute porn brain. This person is so attractive. Kay Vest, the main character, she's so attractive. You like her so much, and I think the performance is very good. Because I thought when I'm going into it, she's going to be very quippy, like Nathan Drake. I think it's a bit more like subdued. She is funny, but not like crazy funny, like quips all the time. In terms of the wokeness stuff about Star Wars, I'm just never going to understand that, to be honest. Like Star Wars has always been left wing, always been woke, like multicultural, lots of like, especially
Star Wars has always had complaints though too, like since the 70s. Like people were mad about people canceled Star Wars over the fucking Ewoks. So
well, also, George Lucas literally said in 2005 that Revenge of the Sith is about the Iraq War and Darth Vader and Palpatine are Bush and Cheney. Like, imagine if someone came out of Star Wars today and said, yeah, this is Donald Trump and Mike Pence in the film, by the way, everyone. Like, George Lucas, who they love, he literally fucking said that. Yeah, he made 3 children's movies about a fucking galactic senate talking about trade regulations. Like, this guy was insanely left. He is still left wing, but like, and he loves Soviet filmmakers. Like, I don't know what these people are smoking when they say Star Wars has gone woke. It's gone the other way. It's gone lib. It used to be woke. Anyway, so in terms of the stealth, so the stealth, I like it, but the instant fail, it's more like, it's not so harsh. It's not like you're going into a base and you'll get an instant fail. It's more like I did a mission last night. You're having to steal something in an Imperial station, and obviously you're surrounded by stormtroopers. You can't set off the alarm, but you can still shoot people. You can get into a fight. They have to go and press the alarm, which you can sabotage. So it's not like once you get spotted, everyone knows where you are. You can actually shoot a bunch of people, run, and they won't find you. But there are like conditions of, if you get spotted and they sound the alarm, you will fail this mission. But it's a checkpoint that goes back maybe like 2 minutes. So it's just like little stealthy areas. And it's in the main missions. It's not in the other ones. So I will say that the thing about the stealth is overblown. In terms of the weapons, I actually really like the way they've done the weapons in this. So you have only one weapon on you at all time. It's your blaster, which has 2 different fire modes, an electric one and a standard one. Electric one is for the droids mainly. But you can pick up loads of weapons, and actually your little pet Nix, you can send him to go grab it. So you can shoot an enemy from far away and you can see it. Your pet can run out in the firefight and come and give it back to you. And that could be like a rocket launcher or something. So I think it's more about, they want you to use all the weapons. And to be honest, it's the studio that made The Division and Division 2. The shooting feels really good in my opinion. And if you've played Red Dead Redemption, same vibe. Like you can shoot from the hip while running, but you can also aim down your sight. So in terms of that stuff, like I think the shooting and everything is really good. So if anyone has any more questions, just say, because I want to talk about it more in depth. I'm not going to bore people, but I'm trying to
Go ahead.
trying to balance it between being on
No,
stream.
dude. So you're happy with the game overall, right?
Oh,
How
this
bad?
is-
How?
Yeah. All right.
So I think how difficult. So I like asked you a question. And I was like, "Oh, shut up! I'm gonna fucking ask you another question."
I'll wait I'm getting the questions out of the way.
My ADHD go crazy. How? First off, how glitchy is this? And I mean, like, I'm being honest, like brutally honest. Like, do we have like a ton of glitches here? And how distracting is that from the experience? And again, I think it's okay to be honest here and not try to cape because the fucking incels are out. Because again, I played Sonic Adventure. All right, that game is so fucking glitchy. All right, and that's one of my favorite games of all time. So how glitchy are we talking about this open world being?
Well, I played
for
Cyberpunk
this
at
game.
launch, and I completed it
Same.
at launch. Like, and I played it on the PS5 with the PS4 version, and I seem to just be lucky. Like, I didn't have too many things with that. This game has been fine so far. Like, I haven't had any glitches, no weird bugs. The main thing is on the PS5, performance mode looks like trash. It's very blurry. The fidelity is bad, but I'm lucky. I've recently been getting into playing games on quality mode, which I thought I'd never do, which is like ray tracing, but capped at 30 frames. So I did that for Cyberpunk, Watch Dogs. I think it looks so much better. So once I put it down to 30, it just looks amazing. And for me, I'm so used to that now. It's fine, but I get how jarring it is for people. So honestly, I can say 8.5 hours. Haven't had any major glitches, bugs. It's all been fine. Ran decent enough when I put it down to 30, and it looks really nice as well. It's the same engine that's powering the new Avatar game, which is the same studio but different like teams and stuff. So yeah,
I know the Avatar game was gorgeous. The Pandora game,
yeah. So it's same as that. So this game looks amazing. But yeah, so I'll try and frame it for people and why it's interesting, because I hope I answered you guys' questions. So I'm a massive Star Wars fan, and I'm not someone who is like, I'll just consume it and think everything's good. Like the sequel films, I'm not a massive fan of. Like many people about my age, if you grew up in Star Wars, you like the prequels and you like stuff like Rogue One and Andor. So what's that saying is you like this more gritty feeling to Star Wars, and that's 1970s style sci-fi I've always really liked. And if anyone is watching the various streams, you've been watching Mandalorian, Boba Fett, Bad Batch. All of that recently has been centered around organized crime in Star Wars, which goes back to like the original trilogy with like Jabba the Hutt and stuff. So this game is actually set between 5 and 6. And I know David likes Jedi Survivor. Most Star Wars media in this recently is set between 3 and 4. And why that's interesting is because 3 and 4 is about the development of the rebellion, but it's not a thing yet. So if you played Fallen Order and Survivor, you're working with Saw Gerrera, who's a rebel from the Clone Wars era, but he's in Rogue One. The rebellion doesn't really exist, but this game is set between 5 and 6. So Han Solo's in Carbonite and Jabba's palace. The rebels are like a massive faction.
Shit.
They've already blown up the Death Star. The Empire are actually in a war with them, which is very different from the context of Survivor, where you're still trying to survive from the Empire. Like the rebellion are actually fighting back, and obviously Episode 6 is when the Empire is destroyed. So it has that context. But what I really like about this specifically is, unlike so much Star Wars media recently, the Empire are literally just the police, and they're a fact of life. Like most of the characters are not complaining about the Empire's oppression. It's just like, oh, I hate the Empire. They're bad for business. Or you see some protesters, but most people even are debating like, oh, the Empire's been good for this planet. And you hear like the conversations with the stormtroopers. So what I'm trying to say of that stuff, it's so immersive, the world, and it has the benefit of like obviously decades and decades of all this lore. But I think they've done such a good job at grounding this in a very unique time period in Star Wars, which most people probably wouldn't appreciate on the surface, because if you're not a fan, me saying between 5 and 6, what does that mean to people? Probably fucking nothing. But like you hear stormtroopers.
No, it means a ton. It means it's between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, and I think that's different. Like I got so fucking frustrated watching every single Star Wars. Like, look, I grew up at a time where fucking hated the prequels, like where everyone was making fun of. I love sand. I hate sand. It's rough and it's coarse and it gets everywhere. Like that speech is seared into my brain. But like that from what you're saying, that sounds. I didn't know it was set between 5 and 6. That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
And I think also that's a part of Star Wars that I think is the most appealing, right? Kind of probably the least appealing to a lot of people who are like mad at new shit and a lot of like really mad Star Wars fans, because old Star Wars like is very lived in, right? Things are just said and that just establishes the lore. You don't have to give you too much backstory on it.
Yeah.
It's just,
Well, that's
this thing looks like this. Yeah.
It's such a good time because if you've only enjoyed the original trilogy, you'll still get stuff out of this. But what I like as well, they've tied in the sequels in an interesting way. Like you're born on Canto Bight, which is the casino planet from episode 8. And I don't like that movie, but they've made me like it more because of how they fleshed out your homeworld. And then there's a planet from episode 9 I haven't gone to, which is also in it. So I really appreciate how, and this is something I think Survivor and Fallen Order did well, they blend so much of the extended media. Because as someone who's really loved this franchise my whole life, it's wild seeing stuff in Star Wars Rebels back in 2014, like this just animated show no one watched. And then it all appears in Jedi Survivor. Like the Inquisitors is literally from Star Wars Rebels, and they're like the #1 villain now. It's really cool to see.
Inquisitors are from Clone Wars.
No, they're from Rebels. The first season of Rebels, and now they're like a main villain.
Were Inquisitors in Clone Wars too?
No,
I think there
Clone Wars was cancelled, and then Rebels brought in the Grand Inquisitor.
No, right? Okay,
played by Malfoy's dad. It's the same actor as Malfoy's dad back in the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, so in terms of like the world, like this is what I want to get to people the most. The gameplay is secondary for me. I think they've done such an amazing job with the world. I would literally compare this to Cyberpunk in terms of immersion. Like the NPCs in this game and the environments and the settlements are so detailed. And if you love Star Wars, this is a dream game. Like I would say I've been so hyped for this game all year. And it's so rare that I'm really satisfied. And they've taken so much inspiration from 1970s movies and 80s. You can, it feels like Blade Runner to me a lot of times, just like in this very dirty, grimy setting, all these aliens that you've like grown up really liking, they're speaking different languages. And I've taken so many photos already because existing in this world is just so fun. And that's why I'm so happy they've nailed the other stuff on top of it, because this would be enough for me. The moment I stepped out of your like attic room in the bar and going through it, I was like, this game, they've done such a good job. That's how I can't even believe some of the scores I'm seeing. I saw Greg Miller at Kind of Funny give it a 4 out of 10. I'm like, you are crazy. Like this game, like even if it's generic or whatever, the level of detail and effort put into this, I can't think of too many games that are rivaling it right now. And you can see the passion of the devs in it. So if you just want to exist in Star Wars, if you love Star Wars, you just have to play this game. Like even if you don't love Ubisoft, you don't love third-person shooters, if you like Star Wars in any capacity, you will like this game because it's just so fun to just walk around and look at stuff and be like, it's like Disneyland. It's like, oh my, I can't believe for the first time ever. And that's why I haven't got to Tatooine, but I'm looking forward to it so much because it's such an iconic location. I'm thinking about all the places I can go, like Ben Kenobi's house, Luke Skywalker's house, Jabba's palace. I'm pretty sure all of them are in it. And it's like, I can walk to that through a desert at my own pace, like with a beautiful like day and night cycle, weather effects. And I'm like, that's just the dream game for anyone who likes Star Wars. So if I'm trying to sell it to people, it just feels like such an authentic experience. And also it's really fun to play. And I'm surprised at how much I like the shooting, how much I like this. Even if you watch gameplay, I will say it doesn't look that good, but you have to play it because even the speeder bike, it just feels so good to drive. And I was looking at that.
You're the first person I've heard say that. Like the one complaint that seems to be universal is the speeder bike is terrible to drive.
No, it feels good. But here's the problem. One reviewer I watched said they finished the game in 20 hours. You have to upgrade. Like one of the early side quests is upgrading your speeder bike. A lot of people won't do that. So you're driving a slow bike that can't jump. My bike can boost and jump, and it feels nice. But if you're rushing through this game, which I think is like insane behavior, basically, you're going to get through the game where you're going to be quite underpowered. But if you bump down the difficulty, you probably get through it all right. And I just think, sorry, someone.
Are there other things you can drive in the game, or is it just a speeder?
So there's spaceship as well. There's space combat.
But like on the ground, is there like, can you drive anything else?
So apparently, I don't want to spoil it, so I haven't been looking stuff up. You can
Okay.
ride a bantha in Tatooine, which is like this big mammoth thing. I'm pretty sure I've seen that. There might be a speeder car because I saw like blanked out things of vehicles. I haven't touched any of that stuff because I'm still on the first planet, which most people by this point I think are getting through it. But I'm just trying to enjoy it because I'm like, you know, you might not get a Star Wars Outlaws 2. There might not be an open world Star Wars game for like another 10 years. We got we got the third Survivor coming out, but that's not going to be open world. So it's like I'm just going to enjoy it right now.
I do want to say this, Cav, because I think actually. So look, like I think we're all familiar with review bombing, correct? Right. Yeah. So look, like if we're looking at the Star Wars, because I'm looking right now at the Star Wars Outlaws Metacritic, right? 76.
Like 40,
it's not bad.
46 user, isn't it?
No, it's 52 user, which is pretty fucking good for a review. So the fact that like that sounds so weird, but like if it's a 5.2 on and there's been a massive review bomb campaign, that's pretty solid, man.
Well,
like that means that
the I think.
Huh?
The word of mouth online beyond like grifting YouTubers has been really solid. Like on Threads, which is more wholesome, you just see so many people saying, I thought this would just be like Assassin's Creed Star Wars, but this is actually like so good. Like I'm so surprised at how good this is.
Well, I think that was actually a pretty smart. Like, look, we were talking about Concord when we started this. Like, that was probably. I think Ubisoft kind of clocked that it was going to get a lot of hate, so they did that whole thing where I remember there was 1 week where there was like a preview week of Star Wars Outlaws, and a bunch of art. There was an IGN video and like 3 other preview videos where people came out and were like, actually, this game's kind of sick, right?
Yeah,
and then there was silence, and then the game came out, and it got the things that I've heard through the grapevine are game is really good or game is very glitchy, right?
Yeah.
But it's a Ubisoft game. It is a Ubisoft. It's a cool Star Wars Ubisoft game, and that's been kind of the thing that's been peering through. And if I work in the fucking culture war where everything that people hate rises to the top, that's not a bad narrative to have.
Yeah,
you know,
no,
but that means that a lot of that stuff isn't bleeding through as much.
Yeah. Well, also people underestimate how much Ubisoft has a good reputation with casual gamers. Like, I know so many people in my life who play COD and FIFA, but they'll pick up Assassin's Creed, and it's like they will not play anything else usually. But it's like, oh, they'll be like, how about that Star Wars game? And also, I will say, this: if you're like thinking this is Ubisoft and I won't play it, I will say this game does not have loads in common with Assassin's Creed. As someone who's played all of those games, I'm surprised at the quality of everything, like the animations. I'm trying to see when I'm playing this game, can I see Watch Dogs in this? Can I see Assassin's Creed in this? I really can't see a lot of them. Watch Dogs might be the closest one, but it's like it feels very unique. And I think if this was like Square Enix, EA, this game would be praised a lot more. I think because it's Ubisoft, it's got a meme reputation. It's all the same. It's all like watchtowers.
I do get one.
Stuff.
I do get one criticism though, like they paywalled like the Jabba the Hutt stuff, like at launch.
So
like
that I think is the biggest
section paywalled. You have to pay extra for a whole completed section of the game.
As someone who plays like all Ubisoft games, I will say what they paywalled will be so insignificant, and they'll give it to you for free in a month because they did the same thing with Assassin's Creed Valhalla with Beowulf. They did the same thing with Assassin's Creed Mirage with Alibaba. It's like they give you this quest with like maybe like a fancy name. It's not even that good. And then later on, they'll release it for free. So that's why like I always know the discourse around Ubisoft games, people don't play them. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm not defending it. But I'm also saying I know the quest that has been gatekeeped.
Yeah.
Jabba the Hutt is the leader of one of the main factions in the game. You interact with him plenty, like with all the leaders. It's not like you can't talk to Jabba unless you pre-order the game. And there's a DLC coming out about Jabba as well, like a full DLC. So I will say, like, yeah, I get it. It's not great. And also the narrative, like, oh, this game's $100. I bought it for 50. Like, I pre-ordered it. Like, it's not 100 unless you buy the collection, but just like the pre-order, whatever. But just don't ever do that. Just buy it for 50 on like a storefront, and it's fine. So yeah, I would say to any of you, if you have past interest in Star Wars, and I would say actually this game is closer to Red Dead Redemption 1 in terms of structure than anything I played off Ubisoft. Like, I was getting major Red Dead 1 vibes. In terms of like everyone driving speeders around.
That is a high bar to clear, sir.
Because the gambling as well.
That is like, a lot of like I know that you love Star Wars, but like that's a very high bar to clear.
I will say this open world reminds me because you got the gambling the card game everyone like is going mad
Right.
about, Sabak. It reminds me of the poker in Red Dead. Just like the open world itself just reminds me in structure. Like you have these big settlements and these little towns. I think it's not. I'm not comparing it to the quality because Red Dead still holds up. But if you're going in thinking this is Assassin's Creed Mirage, I think of it more like Red Dead Redemption 1 in terms of open world structure, and I think that's closer to it. And yeah, just to end this, I could go. I would talk about this all day if I wanted to, but I just wanted to, because I know Zed, you'll have thoughts on this, and everyone will. But with David as like an ending point, I think this is good because we can talk about all the games we spoke about. So I'm done speaking, but I'll frame the question. So with YouTube reviewers, and you're talking about like, especially with Concord, the click culture, like you have to basically dig the knife in when a game's going down. I just want to get you guys' thoughts on like how much this actually influences people, because when you're online, you feel like this is the narrative. So when I read Star Wars Outlaws stuff, mainly people just dismissing it as, oh, it's more Ubisoft crap. Then some people will be defending it, like with the Avatar game, like, no, it's actually pretty good. It's not just Far Cry, Avatar, or Assassin's Creed Ubisoft, Assassin's Creed Star Wars. But with Concord, it was like the game was never given a chance. And we spoke about this on the DMs, just like with SkillUp's review, where he should be using his platform, you feel like, to promote how good this game is.
He
and
liked
yeah, no,
this
actually,
is so. I want to be clear. It isn't the usual SkillUp guy. It's like Austin who does also reviews for. But like I love their channel. Like they do great work. I think they do great coverage of stuff. But the review is like he really like he loves the moment to moment gameplay. He may have it may have been his review or the IGN review. I don't want to. I'm not for certain, but one of them said, "I rather play this than any other free to play competitive shooter," and then he doesn't recommend the game because but largely
it's
like
so
there are fair criticisms about like the Galactic Guy, like all this text and not the story isn't delivered properly and issues like the unlockables aren't, I gotta say, they aren't great. Like it's like color changes, like there really should have been a lot more there. But again, it's like this is a complete game. It's not battle pass, like but loving the game and not recommending it to me is like largely based on Steam numbers, because that was the main complaint in the review, is absurd to me.
And it's
like
a PlayStation
review
game.
should be a review of the game. You should. I think it's worth mentioning. Hey, not many are playing this right now. Just be aware. But this is a great game. I think you should play. Give it a chance. Like it's insane to me to base the conclusion of a review off of Steam concurrence, especially a multi-platform game where I was having no issues the first week finding matches. No, like even this week, to be honest. Like this morning, I played a couple matches. Like it's taking a little longer, but I'm finding matches. But the first week there's no issues, and I was playing crossplay, like it's crossplay PS5 PC. So to complain about Steam concurrence because they didn't look good, but you could find a match, to me is nuts.
Yeah,
and do you think it's just
like
like
so vicious?
Sorry?
Right
Comment
now?
section is saying cope and seethe about Concord, and they're commenting on my resting bitch face. Okay, I told you all, it takes me a while to wake up in the morning. I haven't taken a shower yet. Get off my balls.
So I was just for anyone who wants to jump in on this one. So not what you said, but like with what David was saying about the YouTubers stuff. So I just feel like so G-Man Lives, I think his name is, his Australian YouTuber. He put out a preview saying Star Wars Outlaws was good. He then privated it because all the comments were saying it was trash and they couldn't believe he was recommending it. So even with SkillUp, do you think with YouTubers, they just have to give into this culture so much where even if you really like something like Concord, you've got to end it by saying, don't buy it though. Like you guys, my community could actually give a life to this game. Like, don't buy it.
Some don't, and honestly, this whole experience with Concord has taught me who to trust and who not to trust. The Easy Allies review, like their podcast, I didn't really pay too much attention to. I watched their discussion on Concord. They're critical, they're fair, like of the issues that are wrong with it, but they fucking love how the game plays. And I'm like, these guys get it. They're not afraid of like being honest about what the game is.
Yeah.
They actually they gave
Easy
it a shot.
Allies is
This guy
pretty,
also didn't play the beta because he
he
didn't like the aesthetic, which again, a lot of people didn't give it a chance. He actually played the final game, loves the game. And
Michael
while
Huber
also being
was
critical of the issues that are worth being critical over.
These things, maybe I'm just a boomer, but I feel like these YouTube gaming channels don't really affect my opinion on a lot of things. I'll look at some reviews. I have a couple of go-to ones, game ranks. I'll look at IGN, just because the number, like, I don't know, I like the number system still. But
IGN's decent, to be fair.
Yeah, I think that it doesn't really affect me, but I think it absolutely has an effect on the game itself. I think I'm an outlier. I think that there 100% is this element of audience capture where if you go against popular opinion, then you're gonna get flamed for it. You might lose subscribers or be viewed as a sellout. I mean, you see the way that like some of the Spawncasters, they get attacked because they'll do a video critical of Sony, and then they'll be called a Microsoft fanboy, and vice versa. And it's just very stupid. It's like a very 12-year-old mentality. But like if you, if gaming is your life, and I think this is probably more of a younger vocal portion of their audiences.
I think
but
that's
like
if
that's like your whole life, then this is war for you. I remember being in the trenches during the PS2 Xbox
troll.
days.
I'm on the IGN message boards, man. I was actually a mod for a bit. That was fun.
Fam, I'm old enough. I'm old enough. Again. I bought a Sega Saturn. I put money on a fucking Sega Saturn to be like, nah, this is gonna work out.
Yep.
How did it work out, guys?
I was a GameCube dick rider because that was all my parents could afford to get me.
But you're the game. Mike, if you ever compare a GameCube to a Sega Saturn, I will fly down to Portland personally.
Oh no, Sega Saturn.
I had a Wii U. I had Breath of the Wild on the Wii U.
I had a Wii U as well, Cav.
I had a Wii U.
Yeah.
First off, the Wii U
had the midnight launch for the Wii U. Can you believe
the
that?
only console
The Wii U,
I haven't bought.
The Wii U had incredible games while being a terrible system. And I will 100% say that because like it's what like if you play I was talking about the Sega Saturn. Sega Saturn was an all right system with some kind of good games, right? Dreamcast, amazing system, amazing games. The Wii U, amazing games, terrible system. The fact that I have to like start the Wii U and then it's like, hey, where's your giant slab? It's not charged. I'm like, oh fuck, okay.
See, I was just
this fucking slab.
I was so hyped up on the Wii U because I was so disillusioned with Nintendo because of the Wii. Because it felt like they just were like, fuck all the hardcore gamers, we're going after the casual gamers. I'm like, okay, well that's stupid. I don't want to play Wii Fitness or some fucking tennis game. Like, I mean, that's fun, but I want the real games, and they didn't give us that. So like, I wanted to reward Nintendo with my money to say, this is what I want: a normal controller where I'm not doing this. Like, give me more of this, and then it bombed. But the Switch is okay, Switch
I like the Switch quite a bit. First off, when you launch the system with Breath of the Wild, like which is like, I mean, to be honest, like it's the Elden Ring for Cav and David, right? Like I
fucking love Breath of the Wild.
And for me,
Breath of the Wild is one of the best games I've ever played in my like. That changed the way I've like felt about game. Like I love Breath of the Wild. I've not gotten time to play Tears of the Kingdom. I want to go back and do that whole thing, right? Metroid Prime Reloaded, like
which I just beat. I don't have it on the desk. Metroid Prime Remastered. I just beat it. Finally. That's a game that I got at launch on the GameCube when it came out, 2002, November 18th, 2002. I fell off it. I think I just got stuck somewhere. And I finally, this weekend, beat the game, saw the ending.
Nice.
It was a great feeling.
It looks great, the remaster on Switch.
Sorry?
It looks amazing. The
it looks so good.
Well.
It's amazing what the Switch is still doing. There's one point I wanted to make, Cap, to your question from like minutes ago. I think discourse online, like shitty discourse online, largely affects new IP. That's why Concord sunk, and Star Wars Outlaws is going to be fine because it's Star Wars. Like if it's a new IP, you're just fucked. There has to be good buzz, or you're not going to get a chance. Star Wars, it doesn't matter. Someone's going to play it.
Yeah, I think aesthetic matters for everything. So like, I think you're going to get. Look, if you're in gaming, you are very well aware of there's a large amount of backlash culture just in gaming in general, right? And like we're leftists, we feel very much so on one side of that aisle, but there is a counter side of that aisle with how, like, I mean, I've seen backlash to Call of Duty, I've seen backlash to a lot of other IP that comes out, I think in general, when you're a game developer, you have this understanding that you're gonna eat a rash of shit when you start, and it's up to you a little bit, which is unfortunate because it is what it is. That from creators, I think like when you have somebody like, well, listen, if you see one of those things like this game has gone woke, and they have like a weird fucking thing about how that game looks and everything like that, it's very if the game just looks cool from the outset and they're just going off on it, they're gonna look kind of stupid, and they'll move on quickly because it doesn't work very well. But they're gonna look kind of stupid because, and if they sustain, it's a sunk cost fallacy where it's gonna go, right. Which is kind of, I think, what's happening with Star Wars Outlaws a little bit, Cav. Like, it had that good amount of press. It's not profitable for people to. It's probably profitable for Star Wars haters to shit on for a little bit, but it's not going to be something. It'll probably do pretty well overall.
Yeah, it's a more fringe thing with Star Wars because you have the Star Wars fan community as an offshoot of the conservative fan community. So it's like, if you're not into Star Wars fandom, most people will play that game if they don't dismiss it, and they'll be like, "This is solid. Like this is a 7." Whereas like if you're a cultural grifter, but you can't, like you're saying, you can't dig in the knife like you can with Concord, where you're like, it failed because it went woke, and that's the reason why.
Yeah, and it sucks. And I never played it, but it sucks.
But I think for all those games too, like that have that, right? Like, if you look at the tail of how those campaigns eventually turn out, it usually turns to a wash. I mean, like, look, like I think the best example is The Last of Us, right? The Last of Us 2 was one of the biggest flashpoints in gaming. Specifically, it was such a manufactured outrage grift about this thing that happened, right? And there are issues with The Last of Us 2, right? I'm not gonna.
I got issues with the story, the way it ends, and some of the weird shit. But
we will talk about that another time. It's another discussion.
We should do an episode about that.
Look up the Vice article on The Last of Us 2 ending. There we go.
But the thing about that, but the thing about that game is it was an experience, right? And the amount of hate it got was not there. I just looked at I was looking at Star Wars Outlaw user reviews. I looked at The Last of Us 2 user reviews. It's largely recovered. It's about a 7.6, which is usually what user reviews are with bombing and everything like that. That's not bad. And I think in general, like when you're looking at like how games like fucking Mass Effect 3, years later, Mass Effect 3 is considered this beacon of like how games used to be. But when it came out, motherfuckers called the Better Business Bureau to get them to change the rating and the ending of the game.
I'm a victim of that discourse because I never played Mass Effect 3 despite loving 2. I'm like, this game, I guess I'm not going to play it. It sounds like shit.
It was very woke. They had gay characters and it was a whole thing back then.
I heard it was over like the ending was weird or something, or like
the ending was really shitty. It was bad. But I think that's one of those things where it takes time. Like hindsight is 50-50. So I don't think the tail. So I think like initially when games come out, it's hurtful to developers and people who are working immediately because their jobs are in danger. And that I think is a huge fuck up because we don't think enough about what developers are going through and how development studios are. Like, we like to think of like corporations as this monolith as opposed to like, hey, EA has like 1,000 people under contract and 3 people who are corporate assholes make this decision and 1,000 people lose their job while these motherfuckers make away with money even if a game bombs, right? I don't think we think about that, and we don't think about that nearly enough. And so when it comes to like YouTubers reviewing things, I think they need to be more responsible and everything like that. But I also think that you need to put less stake in X and YouTube and everything, because the way those guys make most of their like nut and money is they'll put out the bad vibes, and the bad vibes will become a social conversation. And if that becomes a conversation, that takes over. So the conversation right now with Concord is, oh, this game failed because not enough players were there. They read all the headlines, that so many headlines appearing, it's going to pick up somewhere, right? So that's the conversation. And that's unfortunate, and that's where we're at, right? But like, if you see weird like, this is the first time I've heard about the woke grift about Concord. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, I've not heard about that at all. And because of that, right, it means that it's kind of failing, right? Like when something reaches outside of like a political sphere where just normal people are like, yeah, I heard it was like something was up with like the people in it and everything. Then it's like
that happened with Last of Us.
That happened so quickly with Last of Us because Last of Us was such a big, fucking enormous game property. Happened with Hogwarts Legacy. Happened with and this is irregardless of whether the politics are good or bad for the backlash campaign, right? It just happens. People have huge incentives for, this game is bad, we got to take it down and everything like that, right? And I think whether or not something sticks has a lot to do with whether or not enough people see it and it's just a conversation starter in public because people have nothing else to talk about, you know. So I don't
Before
know.
Can we also say it feels good sometimes? Like I'm a bit of a sicko. I enjoyed the downfall of Cyberpunk, even though I bought it, completed it, and loved it. I still enjoyed I enjoyed the downfall of Anthem.
You are weird.
I enjoy a good downfall of corporate slop, or when a righteous backlash. So Cyberpunk was a righteous backlash because they sold a game that literally didn't work on last gen consoles.
That
so I'm
backlash was fair, I
enjoying
think.
Yeah, I'm enjoying that. Where with Concord, I feel bad because it's just like it's such a fucking fail. I can't help but think about the people who made it. Whereas with Cyberpunk, it's like a giant property, and it's.
But I feel like
I
feel like even for those
players online, like Concord needs players to exist.
Yeah. I know.
I feel like, but that's also like look, I know a bunch of people who work at Activision Blizzard, right? And like I know what the conditions are for working at those companies, right? And it's not like you know, like you're in a dark hall and everything, but a lot of times people are like, I don't know what the fuck is going on. Like I don't know what we're fucking doing, guys. And so when a giant scandal comes out and everybody thinks that that's the way it is, and then the game bombs, somebody who's just trying to do their job gets fucked, right? I think the issue is, like there is immense amounts of corporate assholes who are running the strings, and you have to find a way to boycott or let those people be known. But I think that what backlash campaigns do is they change the actions of somebody like Bobby Kotick, who used Activision and destroyed game developers for his own bullshit, right? Or Jim Ryan, who made everything a live service game, and pretty much his actions and his mismanagement of the Sony brand on his way out led to something like Concord dying, right? Results in unnecessary damage to people who don't deserve it. So I think like there needs to be like, right, there is a problem with greed and the way publishers act in this space, but we also have to be specific about who we're fighting in this backlash, because normal people get fucked over, which I don't think. And I mean, like, I understand that like, oh, it's collateral damage, but like, man, I know a lot of these developers who get fucked for, like, Riot had a lot of issues and stuff like that, and they ended up laying off staff. And I know a bunch of people who are like, this is just this is so unfair, you know, because why? Because Riot did some guy who half these developers haven't met made some decision in a boardroom just because he's bored one day. That's fucking stupid. You know, it should be like, it should be more consistent. And I'm not dissing Riot or any other developer right now. I'm just saying like there needs to be a more nuanced conversation around this stuff. And I'm not trying to cape for anybody either. I know, because people will fucking come after me for that. But
game developers need to unionize. I think that this year has if it's taught them anything, you need to form unions. Look up how to start a union. There's lots of material out there that will help you have these conversations, start talking to your coworkers, because it's not going to get any better. This is a ruthless industry, and if you do not protect yourselves and protect your livelihoods, then you're going to be next on the chopping block. Now, there are some developers that are great, you know, like the FromSoft, for example. You know, they said they don't want to lay off anybody. Miyazaki was like, no, that's not going to happen. Same with Nintendo and whatnot. Iwata, you know, famously took a pay cut so that way workers didn't have to. That is not the norm. That is the exception. So you have to form unions. Exactly. Things change. Protect yourself. Form a union.
Capcom for the longest time had Capcom, I know, had like a lot of mismanagement from the top down, and a lot of people fucking were furious working there. And then like the entire management structure changed over 5 years, and people became a lot more excited about being a part of that company.
And now it's like one of the best out there as well.
Yeah,
easily one of the best. But there was a period of time where it was dog walk. Like I did a commercial with Capcom. Like it was like my first big thing. Like, oh, I get to rap, and I'm a real rapper and stuff like that. And I didn't get the money that they owed me for like 7 months. Dude, like it was really bad, and like and yeah, man, I just feel
I wrote an article for IGN like 12 years ago. Never got paid. Supposed to pay me. I never.
Wait,
really?
Yeah, David, I have stories like that from my girlfriend, music journalist. Top like music outlets will fuck you around for months when they owe you a shit ton of money. I don't even understand how it's legal, to be honest. But yeah, it's
IGN sucks, guys. I fucking hate IGN.
I mean, the thing is, the people
there are
IGN
fine. It's
have
just the
always been
people there are
solid,
great.
and
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'm
but
doing what I
it's
said.
always-
I'm doing what I said we shouldn't do. Is just like blame the company as a monolith, and I'm like, no, fucking.
No, we should.
Yeah.
yeah, there's always a disconnect, isn't there? Like most people who make games are left wing. Most people who run game studios are right wing. I mean, it more than I read a stat. It's more than other industries as well. Most people who make games are more left wing. So it's like
People generally
you
are
should-
left wing. Like,
Dude, in general,
you know?
I worked at
But
Apple. I worked
ideologically,
at
I'd say.
Apple. You would think that everybody was corporate there. I worked at Apple, and like literally everybody, like a ton of people who I co-worked with were very, very super leftist
Mhm.
about a
Yeah.
lot of stuff, right? You know, but Apple's got to be centrist because of the brand. And like
Yeah.
you can have everybody in a department agree on the same thing, and then one fucking guy, just one guy, is just like, yeah, I don't know, and then it just dies. Like that's
Yeah.
fucking that's a
corporate-
terrible structure.
Corporate life.
Mhm.
It's so dumb.
It's terrible. All right, before we go, we should we have 4 super chats here, so we should just run through these to thank the people. Sam O, $5 super chat. Thank you. Says thoughts on Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2. Are y'all planning on playing it soon? I heard it's getting positive. I think it previews it because it isn't. I don't think
No,
reviews
the
are out
embargo
yet.
lifted today, actually.
Oh, did it? Oh,
Yeah.
sweet. I'm
Getting
Getting
not
very good reviews. I really want to try it. I never played Space Marine 1, but
I'll pick it up on sale.
It's really good.
I'm not going to play it right away, but it does look really, really good.
I might, depending when it comes out, I might.
It
grab
looks like a big
immediately.
step up from World War Z and the Aliens games. I'm
Yeah,
still not
yeah, I agree with
loving
that, Cav.
Mainly fighting massive swarms of aliens in like a horde, like zombies. I'd rather
Mhm.
fight like straight up other people, but I'm willing. The multiplayer I'm interested in looks like Gears of War or something. So
Yeah,
I might.
I gotta wait to play the next game of the year after Wukong. So I'm not gonna play Warhammer because Astrobot's coming out this Friday.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
But,
got-
yeah.
I'm with you. Astrobot first, and then I'll grab.
No,
Warhammer.
you got to
I
play.
got a backlog. I got a backlog this year. This year had
I
a
do gotta
crazy
play
amount
that.
of games at the front, dude. There's so many games that came out this year that were fucking insane. So
Yeah.
I gotta go back.
There's a lot. The last one here, because the other 2 we touched on. Jeremy Elwood, thank you. I work at GameStop. Please educate that Wukong is digital only. We do not have copies. Also, Concord blame Sony, not us. This has been a PSA plea. If anyone has a physical copy of Concord, keep it. It might be worth something in a few years. So don't worry about that. Wukong, I didn't know was digital only. That's interesting. Oh, it was one more. JCast, shout out from the medical clinic, currently treating back pain and sciatica. Workers' comp, baby. Wow.
Let's
Jay.
go.
Wish
Hope
you the
you
best.
better, Jay.
Let's go, Jay.
Yeah, listening to us was be a good cure, I think.
Yeah, it'll help.
Sure.
All right. I guess this is over 2 hours, so I think we're good.
All right.
We'll all talk again in a month, probably.
Yeah, that's
Looking forward to it.
We'll discuss the game of
Yeah.
the year, Astrobot,
No,
and the
thanks
runner-up,
everyone for joining
Legend
in
of
as well.
Zelda, Echoes of Wisdom, or whatever it's
Oh,
called.
I'm gonna play that
So
one
we-
Jesus Christ game that came out where you play as Jesus and you have to answer Bible
Oh, I've
trivia.
seen that.
So
Oh.
excited.
One thing I'll say quick before we
Pre-ordered.
we have to do like a really long game of the year stream in December.
Yeah.
Like
That'll
a
be so
really
much
long
fun.
one.
Yeah, I'm down for that.
But we can,
Yeah.
because obviously we're always streaming to people. We're not just like doing a podcast. We should just like you can like just tap out for like an hour or something if you don't want to stick around for certain conversations. Like for example, if me and David are talking about Dragon's Dogma, then like not everyone has to sit there like held hostage by the Dragon's Dogma. Something like
No,
that.
I want to talk about Dragon's
I like it.
Dogma.
I personally like it, but I
love
feel
Dragon's
bad
Dogma.
for Mike especially. For how
No, don't
early
feel
it is.
bad.
It's
I
how do
enjoy
you-
listening. You
Mike-
guys sell me on a lot
Mike,
of these
how do you not
games.
like Dragon's Dogma if you like Elden Ring?
No, I want to play. I haven't had the chance to. So they
he's a
actually really
hater.
sold me on that and Cyberpunk, but I don't have all the time in the world. So it's like,
Yeah.
Mike has 4 kids. He's too busy all the time.
exactly. No, it's tough because I was playing Neo 2 for like a month and a half, and I can't start something new until I finish what I've started. So
That's
it's
fair.
That's a
You
good
know,
quality
it's-
that I don't have. But
yeah,
I
it's
guess
tough.
I
I
guess
would love to play Dragon's Dogma. I also really want to play Cyberpunk. I was telling them that it was on sale, that and the DLC, but I'm like, am I gonna play it right away? Probably not. And the next time it'll probably be on sale more, so I can,
Yeah,
Yeah.
sales happen.
we gotta
so
we gotta
quick.
we gotta organize
Yeah.
our what games we play from now on, so we don't fucking
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
adult life.
yeah.
All right, guys, it was a ton of fun, man. I gotta bail.
Yeah. Thanks so much for
See ya.
coming.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. See you guys.
See ya.